know Macumba? Voodoo. Granddad was a priest in Trinidad. He used to tell us, when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk here.
What we are dealing with here is a perfect engine.
What's your favorite scary movie?
It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear, and it absolutely will not stop until you are dead.
I can't lie to you about your chances. Yeah. You have my sympathies.
Hello everybody, I'm Quinn Bailey.
And I am Max Corman.
And welcome to Sometimes They Come Back. And today is the big one. This is the longest series we've done yet. It's probably the most famous series we've done yet. It is one of the big three franchises when it comes to slasher movies. It is Friday the 13th. On Friday the 13th. Well, hopefully. Depending on whether we can edit this thing in time.
Oh, we'll work hard. Yeah, no, I'm very excited. I mean, my relationship with this movie is I probably first started watching these movies when I was... I saw the first one when I was probably 13 years old. I would not say it's got the same spot in my heart as Phantasm in terms of big franchises, but it's close. I do love this series. I've seen all of the movies at least twice. They are comfort food for me. Yeah. And I'm a big fan of this dumb, blunt franchise that has no redeeming qualities except for just entertainment value and atmosphere.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, a lot of the big three slasher franchises, and I mean, slashers in general, tend to be really divisive. There are, you'll encounter just as many horror fans who just, dislike these franchises as much as they like them, because the big three we're talking about, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Halloween, these things were, everywhere in the 80s. These are, some of the most prominent horror franchises on the planet. And they all usually follow these very specific sets of slasher rules. None more than Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th is the one out of these big three franchises.
As clean as it comes.
That sticks the closest to traditional slashers. And in fact, this is kind of the one that sets the standard for slashers to the point where later period films and Halloween or even sometimes Nightmare on Elm Street are kind of doing Friday the 13th. This is, especially the first film, is the blueprint of what we know as the 80s slasher. And I cannot underestimate that even if you don't like it, how important the original Friday the 13th is to horror, especially the archetypes of 80s horror.
100%. And at least the first movie, and I'm sure the other ones, Sean S. Cunningham, the co-creator, he's gone on record and said, yeah, we were just trying to do Halloween. It was successful, and we wanted to do it. And it's different enough, and I respect that he's so honest with his inspirations.
He's very
but it's
open
different
about it.
enough. Yeah, it's
And Sean S. Cunningham has a history. He is a former collaborator of Wes Craven, so he sort of came up working with Wes Craven on a lot of his early work. So
I didn't know that.
A lot of my I believe he did produce Last House on the Left. I think he produced The Hills Have Eyes, but I can't be sure. But we're probably not going to dwell as much on production history, except where it's really fine to us. Partially because we have a lot to cover this episode.
Have you ever seen Crystal Lake Memories, the 6-hour documentary?
I have not, but
good.
A lot of the information I'm coming off of this, and this is a book I would recommend you read if you are a huge fan of 70s and 80s horror, is Shock Value by Jason Zinoman. This book is, for me, the definitive history of, sort of the 70s and 80s horror boom, where you got directors like sort of Tobe Hooper, John Carpenter, Wes Craven, and George Romero sort of really emerging. And it's this absolutely definitive sort of history of how what we know as modern American horror really emerged out of the indie boom of the 60s. And it's this incredibly interesting book, and that's where a lot of my understanding of sort of Sean S. Cunningham as a producer, his work with Craven, and his ultimate branching off on his own to try and build something fairly popular.
Bigger than a lot of what Wes Craven has done, honestly. It's
tied
with Nightmare, and probably bigger than Scream, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Cunningham is one big franchise with Friday. I'd argue that Craven got lucky in that he got 2 big franchises. He got Nightmare, and then he hit it again with Scream.
And then a bunch of like great solo films, like
Love
People
really-
Under the Stairs.
Oh, People Under the Stairs. I will find an excuse to talk about that one at some point, because People Under the Stairs is... We'll get to this when we eventually discuss Wes Craven on this podcast, but People Under the Stairs is genuinely my favorite Wes Craven movie, and is like one of the most underrated works of social commentary.
I would say it's
horror
my
ever made.
second or third. No, it's my third favorite. I'd say Nightmare, and I really do like Scream.
Yeah, the first
Nightmare and
Scream is probably a very close second, followed by Nightmare. Like, it's hard for me to decide between the first Nightmare and the first Scream as to which is better, because both are fantastic.
No, I love both those movies.
Anyways, we are not talking about Friday the 13th, which is a mistake, because there is,
a lot to
frankly,
talk about.
too much Friday the 13th to talk
So,
about. Should we just start with sort of, like, a little bit of history to go into it? This is a lot sort of coming out of Zinnemann's shock value, which is Sean S. Cunningham in the late 1970s and early 1980s. He's worked with Wes Craven on The Last House on the Left. He sees Halloween in theaters, and he's inspired by it. He's like, I want to do something like that. I can see that this small movie that John Carpenter, we'll get back to him eventually. God knows I'm going to end up talking way too much when we get back to him, but he saw what John Carpenter did with that small budget and sort of turned it into this smash hit, and he was like, we can do that. Let's do that. Let's make our own Friday... Our own Halloween.
Yeah.
I almost called it Friday the 13th. But, so he originally makes a script called Long Night at Camp Blood, with writer Victor Miller. We'll get back to Sean Cunningham and Victor Miller. The situation between them is very complicated, but Cunningham directly gives Victor Miller the idea, you need to write this movie called Friday the 13th. I like this title. And then, before Victor Miller has completely written a script, immediately goes out and sticks an advertisement for Friday the 13th in Variety. And then, that kind of gets a lot of people's attention. He gets, as writer, like we've mentioned before, Victor Miller, who ends up, after this, going on to work on a lot of soap operas, which is interesting. And they sort of cast a bunch of unknowns, one of whom is a very young Kevin Bacon.
Oh, yeah.
And they sort of...
Every once in a while, they get, like, big names, or, like, before they were famous people in these movies. It's always fun.
They shoot it for cheap. They get, probably the biggest... And another really notable person they get, too, and a man who is, like, gonna come up a lot on this, especially when we're talking about slashers, is Tom Savini.
Yeah.
And Tom Savini is absolutely a legend of horror. He is, like... There are few makeup artists in horror that are as comparable or as influential as Savini. Because Savini is a really interesting person, too. Savini is a former Vietnam veteran who was a combat photographer in the war.
I actually did not know he was in Vietnam.
That's actually why he sort of got into effect. Because, like, Savini, as, like, a war photographer and, like, this veteran, was, like, not as actively involved in combat, and he had to deal with a lot of, like, graphic horrors of the war. He had to photograph mangled bodies, and
I would be, like, Savini, done with horror after that. Like, I would go the opposite direction.
According to Savini, apparently that was the way he coped with it. Like, he started like working through the trauma of that through makeup. Like, in Vietnam, he'd actively sort of be practicing makeup as a way to entertain people, and.
Like, good for him.
And that leads into a career in visual effects work, specifically he did The Prowler, effects, right? Makeup, and gore. And Savini has a lot of truly impressive credits. He is one of his first films is Dawn of the Dead, and that is the original 1978 Dawn of the Dead with George Romero, and that is like the kind of impressive work he is doing.
Second best zombie movie of all time.
He includes Friday the 13th. Maniac, Death Dream, which is his first film, and is an absolutely amazing, really underrated little Canadian horror film about, like, the Vietnam War and post-traumatic stress disorder. It's The Burning, The Prowler, Creep Show, Alone in the Dark, which is another, like, nice, underrated. He does The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, a lot of work with George Romero, and he is...
Did he do The Prowler?
He did The Prowler,
yes.
He
did, alright, yeah.
And what I'm saying here is that I know a lot about... We'll discuss a lot about, like, sort of horror effects artists, because effects artists are, like, for me, they're really unsung heroes of horror movies. A lot of them I know by name. I know what kinds they specialize in, and Savini specializes in gore. There is there are very few practical makeup artists who can do it gore as well.
Tom
and
Savini
as
is easily top 5.
as
Easily
Tom
top
Savini.
5
Tom
horror
Savini is
makeup.
really high up there. It's like him. It's
Screaming
like
Mad George.
It's like my Holy Trinity is like, I don't even know if I have a Holy Trinity. It's like him, Screaming Mad George, Rob Bottin,
Right.
who we'll discuss when we get around to something that he did, like The Thing, or like of course Rick Baker. Like Rick
Right.
Baker's a legend. I'm getting off track. We'll discuss sort of
Well,
practical effects. When
we
come
should-
to it,
we
'cause
should
this
warn
is a
you,
very practical effects
we're-
heavy episode.
We're gonna get off track a few times because
This
there's
is
so
going to be
much
the most
unpacked.
tangential episode
And
yet.
I'm pretty
because not only do
excited.
we have a possibly indeterminate number of movies to cover. I am currently alternating between, is it technically 11 movies we're covering, is it 12, is it 13? I cannot lock onto a specific one, but we are going to get a lot off track.
Ranking
in this
13, we're reviewing 12.
We're
We'll
ranking
talk
13,
about that later.
We're reviewing 12, but technically 13.
Yeah, it's
look,
weird.
We'll get to it later.
I will say,
I think we've been yeah.
I was just gonna say something about this franchise that I do like, as opposed to stuff like Halloween. It's at least 1 through 10 are all more or less, are actually through 11 if you include Freddy vs. Jason, are kind of, they all work as one continuity to some degree. Whereas the remake and Never Hike Alone kind of do their own. Never Hike Alone's like after 8, and the remake's kind of, it does Halloween 2018 and just as a sequel to the first. But this is mostly just one continuity, which is pretty, like, good. I like.
We're not getting into the kind of convoluted timeline shenanigans that we
Right.
are eventually going to get into when
Halloween
we
is
have
a
to explain
mess.
the Halloween franchise.
Or Godzilla.
Oh,
frickin'
God.
Godzilla's gonna be hell.
No. Halloween is infinitely more complicated than Godzilla.
Really? Because the
actually,
Heisei
wait.
era.
Okay, the Heisei era makes sense.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. I'm thinking.
Oh no, the
Heisei
Heisei era makes sense because the Heisei era continues continues
Showa
on from
era.
from after the first film. Showa and Heisei are branching from the first film, and then you get to Millennium and
Yes.
everything falls apart. This has been a preview of what happens when we will eventually do our Godzilla episode, which is probably going to be like 4 parts and way over long because we have way too much to say about the Godzilla movies.
I'm so excited.
That's going to be a very fun episode
love
because I
Godzilla.
really like the Godzilla movies. Like
they're-
we'll get. But we're not talking about the Godzilla movies. We're talking about another long franchise. And with that said, with all this history, with like hiring Savini and Victor Miller and Sean S. Cunningham to come together with this cast, and we get 1980s Friday the 13th, directed by Sean S. Cunningham.
So, I love. This was the first one, the franchise I saw. I think this was your 4th or 3rd. You saw like 7 first, and then
7 was my first one. We'll get to that later.
right. And I knew more or less, I believe, about the twist. I don't know if we want to go into spoilers right now, so I'll hold off.
Yeah.
But I knew more or less about the twist, but I didn't completely accept it until rewatch, and I'll explain what I mean later.
Yeah.
I love this movie, but if you hate this movie or it doesn't work for you, I get it. It all really depends on how much you can stand or enjoy hangout films.
Yeah.
I really like a good hangout films. There's only one character in this that I would honestly hate to be around. I forget his name, but there's that guy who dresses as the Native American and runs around and then also like fakes drowning so he can kiss the girl. But other than that, it's just a bunch of like teens, quote unquote, trying to set up camp. And this is the first time the camp will be open till part 6.
Yeah.
And really, what I like about this movie is a bunch of people hanging out, and there's like a spooky atmosphere lingering over everything. It's very much like when you're camping and you're with friends and you hear a spooky noise behind you, and everyone's like a little scared, and you laugh, or you're telling a scary story. It's very, I really enjoy it. And if you don't like these characters, if you want constant action, you'll probably not like this very much.
Yeah, because this is a lot slower than some of the others.
Yeah,
So the basic plot of it is that we sort of start in 1958 at Camp Crystal Lake, which is in Crystal Lake, New Jersey, and we just sort of get your very classic slasher opening where a couple of counselors sneak into storage cabin to have sex, and someone off screen kills them. Because the thing that's interesting about Friday the 13th to me is that right from the start, this series nails its formula down and sticks to it. Like, this isn't like a franchise where, like, around, like, the 3rd or 4th installment, it's figured out what it wants to be and what it's going to stick to. Right from the start, this knows the formula for a Friday movie.
It starts with, like, a bunch of one group of kids are in like the cabin singing, I think it's like Angel in Heaven or some like song, and they're playing the guitar.
Yeah.
And they're having a good time. Then two teens leave, and then a mysterious figure kills them.
It's like
in
the
a
most
POV
classic
shot.
Friday opening
And the
for
POV,
the first film.
and you could definitely tell the Halloween influences from the POV. You know, it's like,
yeah, it's very much like them riffing. A lot of this is very much them riffing on like previous slashers. It's a lot of them taking stuff from like Carpenter's Halloween and from Black Christmas and kind of synthesizing it into its own film. But the plot is just basically these teenagers get killed in 1958. We jump forward to the end of the 70s, and then we get this new batch of teenagers who are arriving to Camp Crystal Lake, which has now been reopened after years being closed following these killings. There's a unsavory history to the camp where a young kid named Jason Voorhees died in 1957 by drowning, and the counselors weren't paying attention to him. And there's a lot of ghost stories and a lot of like weird cursed lore around this place that our new camp counselors who are preparing this camp to reopen don't really pay attention to, and then they start dying one by one, killed by an unknown assailant, and that's really your setup. But a lot of it, like you said, is more like just watching these teens kind of hang out with each other.
hang out, and one by one
They get killed off.
disappear, they get killed, and it's entertaining. And I love. I think we should talk about really quick. You talked about the legend, and like the legend of Crystal Lake is a big part of this series. A lot of ghost stories in this,
We'll
like
get
people
to
at the
that
campfire.
later.
But we gotta talk about like I just want to mention Crazy Ralph.
Crazy Ralph!
The discount crackhead Judd Crandall of the series.
The secret MVP of these first few films, to the point where the series begins later on desperately trying to replace him after they've killed him off. Like, Crazy Ralph is like, you know that horror stereotype of like the guy you run to at like the derelict gas station or somewhere like that who just like shouts at you, "This place is doomed, you have to leave now," who is like the spooky harbinger of things to come. Crazy Ralph is the embodiment of that archetype. And he is like the peak of that. He is the most shameless version of it, and I kind of love him.
And
He's great.
I wrote in my notes, like, the first time he comes in, I thought he was from Minnesota, because he goes, like, "Never come back again." Like, I can't do a Minnesota accent, but he's
That
got...
was closer to Swedish than it was Minnesota, which
Swedish
is to say it really
Minnesota.
has nothing to do with the Swedish accent.
Well, anyway, Crazy Ralph, though, he gives his performance. And
He gives his
goes
performance.
all
At
in.
one point, he just walks out of a closet in Camp Crystal Lake, and I'm wondering how the hell he got
And then
in
he just
there.
leaves, and they're like, "Should we call the police?" Nah. It's
How
just
long was
Crazy
he in
Ralph.
that closet? How long was he waiting in the closet to just surprise the teens when they opened it and just scream, "You're all doomed" at them, and then just leave? How did he plan? Did he plan this beforehand?
Like,
I want to know the inner workings of Crazy Ralph's mind, because Crazy Ralph is like, he's fun to watch.
And the great thing is, in future movies, when they don't have the Crazy Ralph actor, they just get replacement characters for the Crazy Ralph character.
They have fake Crazy Ralphs.
I love them all.
I think we talked about Crazy Ralph. Savini's like another big MVP of this movie, because the deaths when they happen are like, Friday's all over the place when it comes to quality of deaths, but these ones are like,
they're definitely
actually nasty. They're kind of underplayed and fairly realistic.
Well, the thing...
Like, it's like not over the top. It's just like sudden and like sharp and nasty.
Yeah.
And that's like what Savini specialized in, this incredibly realistic violence.
Like, in Nightmare on Elm Street, there's like a cynical creativity to all of the kills.
Yeah, it's
where
like
he goes like, in your
weird nightmare.
dreams, because they have like this flexibility being in your dreams.
There's a surrealism to the kills
Exactly.
in Nightmare on Elm Street.
And what I love about the Friday movies, which is another thing that people I normally would not love, but in this franchise it works, is just how blunt and stupid the kills are. Just hacking with a machete. Some of them are like really actually clever.
We'll get to them later.
Right, but like in this movie, I'd say by far, spoiler alert, the best kill, Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, Kevin Bacon dies in this movie. I mean, it's a Friday movie. You can presume that people are going to die, but Kevin Bacon dies in this movie.
He plays a character named Jack, who kind of dresses like Shaggy for a bit.
and then he gets impaled with an arrow from underneath his bed, and it's
awesome.
Hard to watch, and it's great. I mean, again, it's Savini being incredibly talented with, like, creating this horrifyingly realistic violence. It's a strange skill, but he really brings his all to his work here. And there's honestly another MVP I want to bring up, a guy who's going to keep popping up again and again over the course of this series, and that is Harry Manfredini.
Oh yeah.
For most of for all but basically maybe 2.5 of these movies, Harry Manfredini is the guy doing the score.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, Manfredini has this very distinct musical style that he brings to the scores of these. It's always very inspired by Bernard Herrmann's work, especially on something like Psycho. It's these very slashing strings, and he's also the guy who comes up with, like, the iconic musical motif of, like, the Friday franchise, which is just this creepy chanting of which later is revealed to be sort of short for the
kill for
phrase
mother.
"kill for mother," which we'll play in when we get later into this franchise. But it's a great motif. It's this really good classical orchestral score. It's like very distinct sounding. It's like very chaotic, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, it's mysterious. It's awesome. It's a great score. Another name we should bring up is Adrienne King as the main character, Alice.
Adrienne King's pretty good in this.
I honestly think...
I really do like her in this.
All right, this is what I was going to mention beforehand. With this franchise, I will have some scalding hot takes, and I think Alice is on par with Halloween 1's Jamie Lee Curtis.
Alice from Friday the 13th is on par with Laurie Strode for you.
She's not as good. She's not as iconic, but she's close. I really like Alice as a final girl.
She's pretty good.
And I
these
feel
first
so
three
bad
movies
for
have
her,
some pretty decent final
actress.
girls.
Right,
Like,
and I feel bad for the actress because we'll talk about it in the sequel, but she left the series because of terrible stalker fans.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that later.
It's horrible
awful.
because she's really good.
No, she's a really good final girl. And something that, like...
There's another actor or actress in this film that I want to talk about, but we'll have to get to later because of spoilers.
Is it Palmer?
It's Betsy Palmer. We're going to talk about Betsy Palmer later. Betsy
Should we
Palmer's
just spoil it? Because everyone knows
Okay,
the
let's
franchise.
talk about the ending of...
Everyone knows
Let's immediately talk about the ending of Friday the 13th. So a lot of the film is kind of setting you up to think that, okay, maybe Jason Voorhees didn't really die. Maybe it's like his ghost or something that haunts the camp. And then the ultimate revelation is that sort of suddenly, like, help seems to show up for Alice, Adrienne King, our final girl, in the form of this woman, Pamela, who is a former sort of cook at this camp, who has a lot of memories of Jason Voorhees dying.
Mm-hmm.
Because Pamela is Pamela Voorhees, Jason's mother, and has been killing everybody at this camp as a result of unresolved psychosis from the loss of her son years earlier, and a need to just punish everyone who she feels is responsible for her son's death, which in this case is all the counselors at Camp Crystal Lake.
And honestly...
And Betsy Palmer's performance as Pamela Voorhees is awesome. Her performance immediately elevates her into, like, all-time great slasher villains, because she is a very human slasher villain. She is not like someone like Michael or the guy we'll get to later in this episode. She's not like someone who's, like, completely inhuman, who's detached as, like, this force of nature. She is just this very understandable, very, like, emotionally shattered woman who is just, like, completely broken by the loss of her son and cannot get over it to the degree that she is just gonna kill anybody who she really feels is responsible.
I actually saw a great special feature with Betsy Palmer where she was like, she was, at first at least, she doesn't love the movie because it's like she's a good actress. She's like a respected, classically trained, I think, maybe actress.
And you can tell.
And she was kind of put into this, what many would consider like a very B-grade exploitation movie.
Kind of like a thankless role.
Right, but it's funny because she went to the reunion in one of the special features, and she was talking about the movie, and then she's like, why did I not return for Freddy vs. Jason? Well, I read the script, and I said, damn it, I'm an actress. I deserve better lines than this.
Yeah.
And she's like, the lines they gave me were so bad. But I think she's kind of come to this is her most famous role at this point,
and like I said, she's really good in it. She's the MVP of the cast for me because her performance really sells it. Her performance is what makes her memorable.
A great combination of terrifying and at first like very like comforting and like
comforting, and it's like identify. Even when she's scary, it's like you can recognize it for very human, very understandable reasons.
When I first saw this movie, what I was going to talk about earlier is I knew that Jason wasn't the killer the whole time, but I thought Betsy Palmer, when she turned out to be the killer, I really thought, because when she kills like Kevin Bacon and whatnot, you see her hands and she's got like this plaid shirt on. I really thought that was Jason doing most of the killings until the end, because I look at Betsy Palmer at her in the earlier parts of the role, and I'm like, there's no way she was killing these kids the whole time. She's just too, like, sweet. But, yeah, I mean, like, then I did see she had the plaid shirt underneath her blue sweater. So I guess she was doing the killings the whole time. And she is great, and she is terrifying.
She's fantastic. She's scary as hell. Speaking of scary as hell, the final scene of the film, where in sort of this, like, big grand finale, like, there's a fight between Alice and Pamela Voorhees, and Alice just cuts her head off, like completely severs it, and then just swims out in the middle in a burst of fear, just grabs a canoe, swims out in the middle, like, and hunkers down and waits for morning. And morning comes, and the cops show up, and there's this beautiful, serene music playing as Alice notes them, waving to them, shouting for them, and then Jason Voorhees' deformed body shoots up from the water behind her and grabs her and tries to drag her in. And it is genuinely... There are, like, very few jump scares that are as iconic
it's like
as this
that
one.
And Carrie are, like, top,
that
like,
one
5.
and Carrie. And,
like
maybe
Insidious.
Insidious, maybe Exorcist 3, like... maybe
one of the best jump scares of all time.
This jump scare is very rightfully memorable. It's like so beautifully executed. It hits you at the exit,
And
that whole like and the build up to it. There is like the right amount of dread to it. It's like this good balance of like something's gonna happen and then hitting you out of the blue with it, which is like the perfect balance of what I want in a jump scare.
And that part I love that scene. It always confuses me a bit because she says like he's still out there, like Jason is still out there, but that was a dream. That's part of the reason why I thought Jason was killing people, is because I thought that was what it was implying. Like,
it's very weird. It's a weird ambiguous ending where it might be a dream, but it might not be. Kind of like the ending of the first Halloween, where just like Michael Myers' body disappears. You can again see the Halloween.
It's a very scary line, though. How Adrian King just says like he's still out there. It's like, oh shit, well, scary.
Honestly, I think like the thing that like. I like this movie. I think that it kind of builds in tension as it goes on. I like the hangout stuff earlier in the movie, but it's a little slow.
What about the fake out lead girl?
Yeah, there's a fake final girl in this. This actually has like pulls a Psycho deal where it's setting up a character as like your final girl, the person who's going to survive the movie, and then it just kills her. Like
early,
very early. Like it kind of upends your expectations of who's going to survive for a little while. I appreciate that. It's definitely a movie that I think the second half is a lot stronger than the first, because like the first has like those.
It's all about how much you like the characters and the hangout setting.
I like the hangout stuff enough, but I do like this movie. But before we move on, there is something we need to discuss about this movie. There is one scene that is burned into my goddamn brain that we need to spend some time on our first of many tangents parsing out, and that is the strip Monopoly scene. What the hell is this?
So this is kind of near the end of the movie, like
no, it's right in the middle. It's right in the middle,
around the middle, right? And people have been disappearing, and like three characters, including the final girl, Adrian King as Alice, they are in the cabin.
Isn't Kevin Bacon part of the game?
No, he got killed already.
Having trouble placing it, but yeah. So they're in a cabin,
and they just said, "Hey, let's play Strip Monopoly." And at first, I thought, that seems like a game teens would play, Strip Monopoly. And then I realized, how would that work?
How the fuck does strip... This is our first tangential conversation. How does Strip Monopoly work?
Okay, so I spent hours on this, and I think I have it, more or less.
Okay, let's actually look at some... I'm trying to look at the quotes. You explain it. I'm going to look at quotes from the film to see if I can get some textual evidence of how it works.
They never explain how it works, but my guess is that when you go bankrupt, after playing... Monopoly's a long game. So, like, after 4 hours of playing Monopoly, when you go bankrupt, you can buy yourself back in by stripping. But then you have no property because you've lost all your money.
Max, no.
Strip.
Oh, no. That is not how it's played, because I found some quotes from the film that are indicating how it's played. And the way I believe, and the way the film seems to indicate Strip Monopoly is played, is that you buy properties like normal, but each time you land on a property, like instead of that is owned by someone else, instead of paying them money, you give them an article of your clothing.
But then,
which just completely breaks the purpose of Monopoly, because what is money for then? Money is just like to buy buildings, but then like there's really no way to actually grow.
No
Is
money?
bankruptcy when you just lose all your clothes? It just
if you're playing,
but that means you're now playing a version of Monopoly with two separate currency systems.
If person A, how would this work? So if person A lands on person B's house and has to give them their shirt, but then do they put the shirt on? And also, what?
Do they wear it or do they just keep it?
If person C lands on the house.
If person C lands on the house, do they have to give person
Do they A shirt? Do they get person A shirt?
Okay, if person B lands on person A's square, they give them their shirt. But if person A then lands on person B's square, do they give them
the shirt back?
The shirt back. Okay, does clothing scale in terms of like how expensive like the properties are? Like,
and I feel like
like where you have to pay more if you land on like a specific property, or if it's like more valuable. Do you have to give more valuable items of clothing? How do you rank which items of clothing are more valuable in that case? Is it like saying, okay, what's more valuable, underwear or shirt? Because underwear is more likely to keep you from becoming naked, but the shirt is the bigger item of clothing. Which one of them is more valuable? I can see the confused look on Max's face right now.
And honestly, throw in strip to it. It doesn't matter. Monopoly's a pretty boring game on its own because it goes so long. So Monopoly's confusing as it is, and it goes on way too long.
They've just invented somehow an even more convoluted version of Monopoly.
What about free parking? Where,
okay, does free parking? Do you have to put? Okay, if you like go to.
Does the banker have extra clothes for you to put on?
Okay, if you pass go, do you get $200 or do you get clothing? Like, is there? Because it is clear that when they buy properties, money is also a value in Monopoly. So they're playing with two separate currency systems. Clothing and money. How does this work?
It doesn't. Well, Sean S. Cunningham, please let us know.
Sean S. Cunningham, please personally contact us with an in-depth explanation. Sean S. Cunningham or Victor Miller, whichever one of you. If either of you want to offer completely differing interpretations of it, fine. But somebody tell us how Strip Monopoly works.
Strip Solitaire would have made more sense for this movie. Anyway,
this is somehow not the only fake card game in fake game in Friday the 13th, because there's also another very poorly explained card game later in the series.
And they don't ever finish the game. They all put on their different
colors. They all
colors,
just kind of give up.
And they leave.
They all just kind of give up. I think they all just realized Strip Monopoly is a terrible idea, as we did when watching it, because how does Strip Monopoly work?
I don't even remember, like, when they cut back to them, did any of them, I feel like they were, like, missing some clothes, just, like, shirts and
but
whatnot.
it barely even seemed to work.
Yeah, it's like, well, we've been playing for 4 hours and I'm already bored. But then everyone gets murdered except Alice King, who decapitates Betsy Palmer, who then does a really great hands in the air "why" expression, and then she goes on the boat. Jump scare, movie ends. It's a very fun hangout movie with a spooky coating over all of it. Yeah. And I thoroughly enjoyed this one. It's it's definitely one of my favorites in the franchise. It's not my favorite era, these first few, but the first one is definitely a favorite of mine. So I would recommend it. It's very important in the horror canon of, film history.
It's very hard to underestimate or understate how important this is to horror. How much this sets the blueprint for the 80s slasher. How much this comes to define a very specific subgenre of film.
And it's not too long. I like the characters except for like one or two. Crazy Ralph is great.
Crazy Ralph is great. The kid who pretends to be a fake Native American, not so much.
And who fakes his death so that he can sexually assault that other counselor.
Keep in mind, this is also not the only shitty prank we're going to get to in this series. We're on to the shitty pranks in the next one.
Anyway, I recommend this. Quinn, do you recommend it?
I actually quite enjoy this. I don't think it's my favorite, or nor do I think it's the best film in the Friday franchise, We'll get to the ones I really like later, but for a start, this is like, even if I didn't, this would still be essential as like horror canon. But I do quite enjoy this one. It's like a decent. It's not like groundbreaking. It's not like the kind of film that changes everything. I don't think it's on the same standard as something like Black Christmas or Halloween. But it's still a very. It's a fun, like fairly character focused compared to the other films slasher film. And like I enjoy it.
And I agree. It's not. In terms of like these big franchises, if it was just Halloween 1 through 3, that would have been my favorite. But this series, I think to some degree gets better with the middle segments.
Oh, we'll get to those later.
And
I can't wait to get to the Tommy Jarvis.
Halloween just kind of drops off for me, but I do like. We'll talk about that later. I enjoy this movie, so we both recommend it. Moving on to the sequel,
Friday the 13th Part 2, released less
quick.
than 1 year later.
It was quick.
Less than 1 year later in 1981, directed by Steve Miner. Steve Miner is
the only director to do 2, right?
Only director to do 2 in this series, but he did 2 different major slasher franchises, because he'll go on later to do Halloween H2O.
Yeah, I don't love that one. But as you know, I mean, like, trust my opinion. My favorite movie of this franchise, and you know it's a hot take, so.
I know.
We'll get back to that.
We'll get back to that. But anyways, Friday the 13th, Part 2. So this opens 2 months after the ending of the first movie.
It starts with
with a recap with Alice, Adrienne King from the first movie, at home, sort of recovering, unaware that somebody is just stalking her outside her house.
What song were they playing? Like Itsy Bitsy Spider, as like we see feet walking?
They're playing creepy music,
right,
as like you see feet walking down this like suburban street. And then she opens up just her refrigerator, trying to feed her cat.
Oh, there's a cat scare.
There's a cat scare. We have somehow not gotten these in the podcast yet, and I want to say we're going to mark any time we get them. One of our favorite things to see as like a goofy touch in any horror movie is a jump scare where the film just has a cat jump out at you, where the film just like throws a random cat as a fake out scare. And this is going to happen multiple times in Friday, and it is always very funny whenever they do it, because whenever movies do it, there's usually a progression where it'll go to increasingly weird lengths to have the cat scare you. Like, there'll be just like points where you'll wonder, how the hell did the cat get in there? It's kind of just become something funny to note when it shows up because of just how much it shows up across movies. This is like, it's the easiest method of jump scaring you. Okay, we need a quick scare for here. We need to like fake out. Fuck it, throw a cat at them.
There are YouTube compilations of like jump scares with cats in every horror movie or action movie, and it's so funny.
And this franchise,
Community does a great joke about it.
This does not have my favorite cat scare of all time.
Which one is that?
We'll get to it with Pet Sematary. Pet Sematary cat scare is actually...
Well, that's like that one makes sense in the context.
That one's terrifying.
That one makes sense in the context, whereas...
the eyes in that one are just creepy, but this one is a very, very goofy, classical cat scare. It's just like, opens the door and boom, cat jumps out at you, and there's like a loud meowing, and it's supposed to be the big jump.
So the story I understand is that Adrienne King, after being harassed by this stalker, didn't want to be in the sequel, so they threw her in at the beginning.
And they kill her off.
And they kill her off immediately, which is disappointing because I really like her as a final girl.
Yeah.
But it makes up for it because then we get the title card that explodes.
Okay, no. We need to talk about this. Tangent number 2.
Title cards.
This is not going to be a single tangent. We're going to come back to this film by film by film. Because at least through the first, I'd say 6, maybe 7, the Friday the 13th title cards become increasingly weird and over the top. So in the first movie, it's the title of the Friday the 13th title zooming towards the camera in these giant 3D block letters until it literally breaks the screen and glass rains down. In this one, it hits the glass and it explodes.
And it's awesome. They're like, yeah, we just killed off the main character. We're metal. Woo!
This is somehow not the most over-the-top title sequence we're going to get. There is an even weirder title sequence we get to later. We'll talk about that with 6. So anyways, in our opening scene, Alice just opens the door of a refrigerator to get the jump scare cats and food. Pamela Voorhees' head is in there, and then just gets an ice pick through the head and is dead. And this is also our introduction to the true recurring villain of the Friday the 13th franchise, Jason Voorhees.
And that's like each of the first 4 movies, actually 6, are very important to the series in their own way. This is the first time we see Jason Voorhees, but he looks different. He's
got a bag over his head.
He's got a bag over his head, and without the bag, he has a beard.
Yeah, he has a beard at this one,
which is weird.
We're gonna get a lot of very, very different Jason Voorhees appearances.
But
with all these movies, Jason is pretty much gonna look completely different in every single movie.
And so with the Baghead Jason, they're like, oh, we were inspired by
The Time That Dreaded Sundown, right?
Sundown, which is a fun movie. I prefer Boggy Creek. That's my favorite of the Charles.
You can't deny that The Time That Dreaded Sundown has the single most unintentionally funny kill in any slasher movie.
Oh.
The trombone scene, Max. How could you forget the scene where the killer slowly duct tapes a knife to a trombone and then begins playing the trombone and repeatedly stabbing a man by bringing the trombone slide in and out. It is the funniest kill in slasher history, and I refuse to believe that it was not intended as comedy.
It's not that I can tell that this was inspired. The outfit, the look, wasn't inspired by The Town That Dread Sundown. It is The Town That Dread Sundown minus an eye. That's it.
It's The Town That Dread Sundown minus an eye, and sadly, Jason does not kill anybody with a trombone.
He does have some good kills. He's got that Texas Chainsaw kill with the
where he pushes the guy down the
guy in the wheelchair down.
The guy down the stairs. But he doesn't kill anybody with a trombone.
It's true.
That's the issue.
He is a clarinet, but other than that, like.
But otherwise, after that opening, we get Friday the 13th again. That's the thing about this movie. This is pretty much a remake of the first movie, but with different kills. And with Jason as the killer.
It's a hangout film. It's also got a very good final girl. I really like Ginny, played by Amy Steele.
Yeah, she's pretty good. She has a very, very cool way of sort of beating Jason.
Right, she's a child psychologist, which comes into play later. I do like this Jason. You can still you still see that they're trying to figure out the footing of where they want this franchise to go. Jason's like more or less just a hillbilly, cannibal, Hills Have Eyes kind of guy. He's running, sack on his head with a pitchfork.
Yeah. Just kind of...
It's the same idea of, like, it's a hangout movie until the last 30 minutes. It feels a little bit
more like the camp in this feels a little bit more like a real camp. We're not going to see, like, the zenith of that until we get to part 6, where Crystal Lake feels the most like an actual camp. However, I think we also must...
But it's a different camp. It's not Crystal Lake.
It's a completely different camp,
But on the same lake, maybe?
On the same lake, I think. We're not really sure. Whatever it is, Jason's going after all these different teens. The kills in this are kind of all over the place, because Savini has left the franchise at this point. He'll come back, but at this point, the kills are a lot more over the top than the first film. There's a lot more... I think they're also kind of a little bit more uneven. Like, they're not like this. Some of them are really good. Some of them are less good. They're not all, like, on the same consistent level of quality.
I just wrote there's, like, a bunch of, like, bad jokes. Like, there was, like, a frog in the blender joke and bear poop jokes. Like, some guy just keeps making jokes about...
There's the hot dog match cut.
Yeah. There's Ted, who is a survivor of the series because, alright, it's kind of a problem, but I don't really care. A lot of the survivors are just gone from the movie for a while because they go out to town just to hang out for a bit, and then they go to a bar, hang out, and then leave for the climax. And then they just leave Ted there, Ted the comedian. So Ted's alive because they just forgot him at a bar.
Ted's alive, maybe he shouldn't be.
Ted was just a weird guy. I don't know. I didn't hate him. He was funny.
But, yeah...
I think this had the most amount of survivors, because it had...
Yeah, the most people survived this movie.
Ginny survived. Ted survived because he was forgotten. And then Paul is very unclear if he survived or not.
I think he survives. And then sort of in the end of, like, the first...
Did the dog survive?
And then in the end of the third one... In the end of the third one... Oh, no, the dog dies, because it's, like, it's implied through the match cut, because it cuts from this like dog running away from the teens who own it, and then it runs into Jason in the woods, and then it cuts to somebody throwing a hot dog on a grill.
Right, but we do see the dog at the end. Was that a dream or not? But remember at the end, the dog came in, And she's like, "Oh, dog, you're still alive!" And then Jason jumps through the door because all these movies end with a jump scare.
All these movies end with the Jason jump.
So it's unclear if the dog.
Well,
died.
no, not all of them. Well, there are ones where it just ends with like the shot.
The
from
first
dog.
few, and
The
jump
first
scares.
couple ones end with it because it's the formula the first movie did, and the first movie made bank. This thing did really well at the box office, so it's like they had that. I mean, again, the ending's really good because, like you mentioned earlier, Ginny is a child psychologist, and so what she does, since Jason is basically in a state of like, let's say a mentally stunted state where he's kind of still mentally this very violent child, she dresses herself as Pamela Voorhees, and she pretends to be sort of Pamela Voorhees as a distraction for Jason, even though Jason already literally has Pamela's head mounted on a shrine in his basement.
But he's
Which is cool, I guess.
It's a staple, but
It's a staple of the franchise. Pamela Voorhees' desiccated head.
yeah, and because he's kind of like childlike still, she's able to use her psychology, but it was really just, I don't know. It was
long enough
fun
for
take.
Steve to take him out, right?
Right.
Steve, right?
Paul.
It's not Steve. Steve Miner is the director.
Yeah, Steve Miner. Yeah.
I think before we move on from this and give our final rankings, I think we need to acknowledge the losses of this movie. I think we need to acknowledge the most tragic loss of the franchise. I think we need to take a moment for Crazy Ralph. Rest in peace, poor Crazy Ralph.
Crazy Ralph, I don't know why they killed him off, but they did, and it was sadder than when Adrian King died.
We lose multiple survivors from the first movie in this one, which is
Too
tragic.
sad. But, Jason's not someone to be messed with, I guess.
Yeah.
Some of the dialogue in this movie was weird. I just have in my notes, someone said, "Nice night for a duck," at one point.
The first act of this movie is mostly about just summer camp bureaucracy.
Honestly, I would actually kill to see... Well, I wouldn't kill. I would maim to see Richard Linklater style.
Richard
Friday the 13th.
Linklater's Friday the 13th.
Like, Dazed and Confused, but people get murdered
Dazed and
throughout.
Confused with a slasher.
It would be
I'd
great.
watch that. I'd watch that. But yeah, this one, I don't like it. It's fine. This is probably one of my least favorite this year because it feels like it's entertaining, but it feels like so much of a direct retread of the first film for me, and that's kind of my frustration for it. We'll see later installments that kind of add new things or push it further, but in this one, it feels most directly like they are just redoing the first movie.
If you only had 3 movies to watch in the series, it would not be. I would not add this to the marathon.
Yeah, this is not one of them.
I do like it. There are honestly, where I'm coming from. I enjoy all of these movies except for 2 or 3. Maybe I dislike 2. I'm medium on like 3, and the rest I love to some weird degree, because I'm weird like that. But no, it's like the first movie, but this time it's Jason, and it's not as atmospheric. It's just like a slightly worse version than the first.
Yeah.
Not slightly, it's fine.
Yeah. But anyways, after this, we get 1 year later again. So they're just cranking these out at this point. Steve Miner returns as director for Friday the 13th, Part 3.
And I feel like, was this supposed to be the last one? I feel like...
It feels almost like it kind of might have been the last one.
Because this one doesn't... Does it end with a jump scare? Oh, it kind of does. Oh, kind of. Anyway, this movie is in 3D.
This movie is in 3D, and we watched it in 3D. And as a result, I'd like to go off on another tangent, and I'd like to name for you, because there's a point in this film where it's like the first few minutes, since they're a recap of the first film, they're not in 3D. For some reason, the titles are designed to look like they're in 3D, but they are not. For some reason, I can't friggin' explain. And then there's a point, and then suddenly afterwards, the movie is in 3D. And as a result of that, I'd like to go on a tangent, and I'd like to give you a complete list of everything that pops off the screen and sticks out at the audience out of the
They are
camera
generous.
in Friday the 13th Part 3 3D. We have a laundry pole, a TV antenna, a snake, a meat cleaver, a plank of wood, a mouse on said plank of wood, a metal pole, a baseball bat, someone's pointer finger, marijuana, a human eyeball not attached to someone's head, a hay bale, a wallet, a fist wrapped in chains, a yo-yo, a biker's head, not a severed head, just a regular head, an unidentified small metal object, the blunt end of a pitchfork, the sharp end of a pitchfork, the blunt end of a completely different pitchfork, a machete, 3 separate oranges as well as 3 separate apples, a harpoon, a man bisected from the crotch up or possibly the crotch down, I'm not entirely sure, blood dripping from the body of a man bisected from the crotch up or possibly the crotch down, I'm not sure, popcorn, a waffle iron, electricity, a fire poker, a human eyeball which is attached to a head, technically, literature, a kitchen knife wielded by the final girl, Jason Voorhees, the final girl's crotch, another machete, Jason Voorhees' crotch, Jason Voorhees' hands, an axe handle, and a boat. In total, that is 44 things that pop off the screen.
It honestly rivals Spy Kids 3D in terms of
It
how
is one of
generous
the most
they are.
delightfully excessive uses of 3D I've ever seen. And you know what? I'm going to say this. The 3D in this film is...
It's good.
It's done pretty well. Like, there are films where you can tell that, like, okay, they converted this afterwards. And this one you can tell they shot it in 3D. Because this film is very much composed to be in 3D. There's a lot of
100%.
framing where it emphasizes depth. Like, you can tell that this was, like, the intent from the start. And not just from the 44 separate things they have popping off at the screen at you. Which is about 1 every 2.5 minutes.
I remember, like, between, like, 2009 and 2011, or, like, give or take, like, 2 years back and forth, they had, when 3D movies were popular, and, like, Three Musketeers, Pirates of the Caribbean 4 were in 3D, and they had maybe 1 or 2 shots.
Because they were all, like, converted afterwards.
Right. Except for, like, Pirates 4, that was, like, an obvious, and they meant that.
Except you had, like, some movies where they genuinely shot in 3D. Stuff like Hugo or Avatar, where it's like,
right.
The films were designed to be in 3D. And you can tell when a movie's designed to be in 3D, and this genuinely was designed in 3D.
This, like, 3D has died more or less for mainstream, or, like, no one goes to see 3D movies much anymore. Like, when was the last time you went to see a 3D movie in theaters? It's been a while for me.
Yeah. I do enjoy them from time to time if the 3D is done well, and they're fun as a gimmick.
If it's something where it's like Friday the 13th Part 3, then yes, because this movie should be seen in 3D, because that is so much of the charm of this movie, of they're just like, look at this technology.
Can we also talk about the theme for this film? Because this theme
They
song,
go,
the funky
disco.
Jason theme song, this is the disco theme song. There is a disco remix of the Friday the 13th film.
And we're only on Part 3.
We're only on 3. This is not the height of excess this franchise will rise to. We're going to get to the point later on where this franchise has multiple plot recap songs.
So this...
And we'll get to those later.
This movie, it starts with a funky theme.
Recap of the first film. Second film.
Second film. How's the title card happen again?
It just kind of sticks out off the screen. It doesn't explode or
it's
anything.
3D,
It's just
though.
like Friday the 13th Part 3.
And
it's like stylized like the Superman opening titles for some goddamn reason.
So this is an important movie for the franchise because this is when Jason gets his mask.
This is Jason with the hockey mask. This is Jason with the machete. This is where the Jason we know comes into play. And
admittedly, it comes in a bit late. He gets it off of, we'll talk about him, Shelley.
Oh God, Shelley.
And he gets the mask in like the last.
Is Shelley
20
the
30
Jeff
minutes.
of the Friday the 13th movies? Okay, no, that's probably somebody from the remake. That's probably everybody from the
Trent.
remake.
Anyway, no. Shelley is the real serial killer. But he gets killed, and Jason takes his hockey mask in the last like 20 to 30 minutes, and then we get like a hunchback Jason. We also get like we learn that the final girl in this movie has a past with Jason because he attacked her once.
Yeah.
I believe this movie takes place like immediately after the second movie.
I believe so.
So.
Something I noted is that this film is like Friday the 13th has locked into a formula at this point, which means that this features the entire rundown of every single teenage slasher victim character. It is all the stereotypes. Every single one of them are in this movie. We even have a biker gang. We even have like a insane gang of biker punks who try to kill the protagonists at some point.
Yeah, so this movie takes...
And there's also, like, a stoner that's clearly 20 years too old to be hanging out with these teens. Like, Chuck is way too old to be hanging out with any of these kids.
So...
And we even get a fake Crazy Ralph. He's not as good as the original.
No.
I don't even remember his name.
Right, he just shows up. He's, like, sleeping on the road, and then he shows him an eye, and he said, "I've warned thee." And it's like, okay.
And it's like, it's just diminishing returns at this point, man. You're not Crazy Ralph. Don't try to be.
No, he's probably my least favorite of the Crazy Ralph standees, just because he has so little, like, presence in the movie. He just shows up once.
There's a lot of very weird details about them. It's kind of, again, like almost redoing 2, which is redoing 1, so it's like that. But it's kind of more simplified to the point where it's just like your classic like sequence of kills slasher movie. But this has a lot of very weird touches that make it interesting to me. Like we have the like 5 minutes where this just switches to being about a biker gang fighting
Right.
Jason, which I kind of like.
And Shelley
Which
tries to
they're
fight him.
cooler than any of the protagonists. The biker, the gang of like give no shits punk bikers in this are far cooler than any of the protagonists, which means they are basically some of the first to die.
The bald African-American guy, though, he gets hacked multiple times. You see him, he's dead, but then he comes back at the end, and it's like, how? And he's like, just...
Clearly this man was the protagonist of a completely different slasher franchise.
Exactly. Also, really want to quickly mention the timeline of the series gets off the rails later on. I just want to say this movie was released in 82, I believe.
Yeah.
This movie takes place in 84. And it's going to get the discrepancy between the year of release and when it takes place will get wider and wider.
Yeah, because here's the weird thing. If you when you usually see this with a franchise, it's like, okay, these movies take place in the past before the movie came out. Before the movie comes out. And these take place after. So these movies begin to increasingly take place in the future.
Right, like, I want to go warn the characters.
Baffling.
It's wild. No, this movie is fun. It's got a very different aesthetic from, like, the woodsy, northeastern woods as the first two. It's kind of like
a little more, like,
deserty.
streamlined. It's like, it's more California. It's more clearly shooting in California at this point. Again, I like the use of 3D. There's, like, later on we get, like, 3D flashbacks where it's layering 2 completely different 3D images over each other, and it kind of screws with your head, but I kind of appreciate it. There's a lot of weird touches in this. I think we need to talk about Shelley. We've been putting this off for far too long. We need to talk
Shelley's
about how
insane.
Shelley is a character in this film who I am completely convinced is just another serial killer in training. Shelley is a psychopath. Okay, he's not in training. He's just another serial killer. Shelley's a psycho. Shelley is Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. If Patrick Bateman from American Psycho only listened to Weezer.
So, the thing is, some of these movies have characters.
He constantly makes jokes about just killing everybody. He's the guy who's walking around. He's just walking around carrying knives. He has the hockey mask. He's another fucking slasher.
So prove
to me that Shelley isn't going to kill somebody if Jason doesn't kill him first.
There are characters in the series that are obvious stand-ins for the typical horror franchise nerd like us.
We'll get to the good one later.
There are good ones. But, you got Tommy Jarvis. He's a good one. There's that guy in 7 and 8.
8 probably.
8 is better.
7 was kind of an incel.
Weirdo. Yeah, but this guy is another example of, like, hey, don't you nerds relate to this guy?
It's our horror nerd point of identification, and this man is a psychopath.
No, I do not.
Definitely a sociopath, possibly a psychopath, probably a serial killer.
Like, don't you guys relate to how he's like an outcast? I'm like, no, I don't relate to him. Kill him. He's awful.
He's awful. He's terrible. Also terrible is that the supermarkets in Crystal Lake are hella racist.
Oh, God.
Also, they play the soundtrack of the film.
Which is too meta.
They're playing the score of the film in the background. They're playing the Disco Jason theme, which is
weird.
It's not the only time this happens in the franchise. It's not the most baffling time it happens.
It
happens in 6. Later. We'll talk about it in 6, because 6 blows the metaphysics of the Friday franchise completely open.
But this is the last time I feel like Jason feels like he's truly human. Because
Yeah.
even though he's still human Jason in part 4, I think this one he definitely seems more stoppable.
Yeah.
I do like his...
After this, Jason is just going to progress over the course of the franchise into something that is eventually straight up said to be supernatural. And my honest feeling about it is that, and this
better.
is like my big hot take on the Friday franchise, I like Supernatural Jason more.
I think most people...
Supernatural Jason is way more interesting than just having him kind of be another human killer like Michael Myers. And we'll get to the most interesting ways in which that's done. We'll see that really heavily around 6 and 7, which is where Supernatural Jason is like the most interesting to me.
And no, so I don't... This is not what... This used to be one of my more favorite ones when I was younger, but I don't really get why now. I think I like the biker gangs.
It's silly and it's fun.
And
it's an extremely silly
and
movie. It's got a lot of weird touches, like characters just trying to have sex in a hammock, which seems like it'd be hell in the spine. There's like random psycho references where somebody just gets like, where Jason just almost straight up does the whole like gently in the shower.
This has got
there's
that
like a
great...
point where they're skimming through a back issue of Fangoria and there's a Tom Savini cameo in an article, which is weird, but then he turns the page and there's a goddamn Godzilla cameo in this
Godzilla
movie.
versus Megalon.
Godzilla versus... There's a thing in Figure about Godzilla versus Megalon, which is like...
Jet Jaguars in the
That's
series.
the one! Jet Jaguar is part of the Friday the 13th canon. I don't know how to feel about that.
I love
Mostly joy.
I love
Mostly joy and some confusion. But yeah, I was gonna say, Jason. It's interesting because Jason isn't like really like the lumbering death machine he is yet.
He's just
this
like a
one's
hunchback guy.
This one's kind of like again like very traditional, but I enjoy this one because it has like it's like one of the funniest, accidentally funniest ones. It's like it's got a lot of like very weird, silly touches that make it very entertaining.
Mostly in the 3D.
Mostly into 3D, also still on the plot. Shelley's a psychopath. I don't know why the weed guy's still hanging out with these teens. He's clearly 2 decades older. Why are they playing the music over the playing the music at the supermarket?
But
again, I think it's better made than the second one. I like the use of 3D. I think it's like clearly designed to be in 3D, and it's like 3D is the best way to see this movie. If you can get the copy of this film that has the 3D version on it, it is for me the only way you should see this movie.
I mean, it's not
because
even
it is like it is what it is designed to be shown in.
Like there's the collection we saw most of these movies through, which was just a DVD collection. It came with it. I got for like $15. It was like 8 movies for 15. It was like perfect.
And then the 3D and then the version we watched just had the 3D version on the DVD.
Yeah, it was great.
And it was actually a pretty good transfer.
No, yeah. It was just like the blue and red 3D.
Yeah, just like your classic blue and red 3D. And I kind of... This one's kind of the biggest guilty pleasure one for me. This one is like one of the ones where it gets really... This is one of the... Is like the really, really dumb one that I enjoy.
No, yeah.
Even though it's hard to explain why.
This is definitely one I really like, even though it will probably rank lower on my list. I do very much enjoy it. The ending is, it's a fun ending where she strangles Jason in the farmhouse with the chain and then hits him in the head with an axe, which is one of the only moments of damage to the mask that's continuous throughout the series. Because all the future movies,
always gonna be
until he replaces it in part 8. It's always got the notch on it, like, no matter what.
Anyways, I think it's time to move on to...
Part 4.
After a 2-year jump, we get Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Now, this is directed by...
The final chapter,
sort of the first actual, like, slasher movie veteran of this franchise. We get director Joseph Zito, who directed The Prowler 3 years earlier, which is a pretty solid slasher. But more importantly... Friday the 13th, the final chapter, is the return of Tom Savini.
Crispin Glover. Oh, Tom Savini.
Okay, and Crispin Glover. We'll get to Crispin Glover. And, like, you can notice that, like, Zito's got experience with slashers as well as, like, Savini returning. Because this, for me, is one of the best made films. This is, like, genuinely one of my favorites of the franchise. Like,
so, people give a lot of shit for this movie. Like, everyone likes this as, like, top 3 usually. But people always make fun of, like, the final chapter. It's not really the final chapter.
It's
but
not really.
It kind of is the final chapter for a certain era of Friday
It's the
13th,
final chapter
of
for,
human
like...
Jason.
It's the final real human Jason Voorhees film. Well, 5's in a weird place. We'll get to 5, but...
I feel
this is like really the ending of like the first era of that,
right.
and it's also kind of the beginning of the new one because this begins the Tommy Jarvis trilogy, which is like a series of 3 films, and I really like the Tommy Jarvis trilogy. I think 5 gets a little weird. We'll discuss 5, but 4, this one is fantastic. We'll get to 6, and I have a lot to say about 6. But this one is...
Let's start with the opening. How instead of a 3D...
It's a clip show. It's a clip show.
It's a clip show and then an exploding mask.
The mask explodes. The title sequence explodes again. Like, it just keeps exploding. I don't know what they're putting in these title sequences. But yeah, Savini's back. We don't get any time jumps this time. This just, like,
this is
picks
right
up
after.
immediately where 3 left off.
And so right now, part 2 was Friday the 13th... Or, no, wait. Part 2 was Friday the 13th. Part 3 was
part 3.
14th or 15th, and part 3 was
this is the 16th.
Yeah, this is not as good of a name. Monday the 16th.
No, I think it's
Friday 13th, Saturday 14th, Sunday 15th, Monday 16th.
Okay, Monday the 16th. This is Monday the 16th.
Give or take.
So we get the police. So we get this movie. It starts out a little It starts out different than the other ones. We don't get to the usual expendable teens right away, because instead we get sort of immediately, right after the end of 3, police are cleaning up everything that's going on. They've taken Jason Voorhees' body to the morgue, and then Jason just rises up off the slab, kills the coroner and a nurse, and then just heads back to Crystal Lake.
It has one of my favorite shots in this movie when you've got all these police and ambulance people cleaning up the bodies, and then they all drive away, and then it's all quiet from the set of part 3.
That's the thing. This has a lot of tracking shots and long takes in this.
Right.
Because I'm gonna say I really like 6. We'll get to 6 because this might be the best directed of the Friday the 13th movies. Because Joseph Zito knows what he's doing behind the camera. There's a lot of really beautiful shots in this. It's very beautifully paced. A lot of the scares are gorgeously framed. There's a lot of this one really amps up the atmospheric qualities of the film compared to the first 3. It's kind of the same level of I'd say production quality and budget as the first 3, but this one uses that budget a lot more. This one works as much as it can out of it.
If someone said, "Hey, where can I watch the most pure Friday the 13th movie? The one that is the most." When you think of Friday the 13th, what do you think
This is the most classic.
This is it.
This is the classical one, and this is the best of all of the more classical Friday the 13th. This one's it's a lot more patient. It really knows how to frame Savini's makeup and gore effects so that they are genuinely unnerving, because they're unnerving in the first one, but this one has even better pacing and framing for them, so they hit even harder. And it's also more interesting in story because I think we have immediately more interesting protagonists. Because after this very slow-paced, careful opening where Jason comes back and kills his way out of the hospital, we get our usual
horny doctors.
Kills the horny doctors who are trying to have sex in in the morgue, which is I'm not going to go into that. That's horrifying. I don't know why you'd do that. But after that, we get usually our sort of group of teens. We get our regular group of teens coming up, but then we also get the people. But they're not our heroes for this movie. Our heroes for this movie are the people who are living next to them, who are the Jarvis family. We have
Tommy.
It is Tommy,
Melinda?
12-year-old Tommy Jarvis, and his older sister Trish.
No.
And they are...
Melinda was from part 7, or Melissa.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of those.
But yeah, Tommy Jarvis is played by a very young Corey Feldman. And Tommy Jarvis he's going to become the running protagonist for this entire trilogy. He is the big recurring survivor across these movies. He is the Laurie Strode of this franchise. And he's really good. I like him because he's he's the horror nerd character done right. He's just this bright young kid who's really into monster makeup, and he's really good at it. He has a real natural talent for effects. He loves horror movies, and he's just this really nice and enthusiastic kid. And that's the thing I really like about this.
Video game too.
This is really good. This is one of the best when it comes to character, because the teens are definitely better written than usual. They're still kind of your stereotypical horror.
They're definitely
teens.
hornier.
They're definitely
There's
hornier.
a lot of strip swimming, but the
skate Jarvis family, you see Tommy and sister and like his mom, they are really good. Like, they feel like this real family. They're like they're kind of a little bit dysfunctional, but it's like this really friendly dysfunction where you can tell they all still really love each other, and it's like you really care about them because they're like really nice people. And again, it's why this film works for me, because it's like we take the Friday it's not doing anything out of the formula. It's just taking the formula and making it as good as it possibly can be. And that's why this thing works for me, because it's like really well executed. We even get callbacks to previous movies, because one of the characters later on turns out to be the sister of one of the victims from part 2. Yeah,
brother.
Rob.
He's the brother.
Rob's the brother of Rob's sister was a previous Jason Voorhees victim.
He's hunting. It's kind of
he's hunting down Jason.
It's a great trope.
We'll get back to people hunting down Jason later.
It was semi-reused in the remake and part 9. But
Rob's a better execution, because again, this has a lot of like decent, subtle, very human characterization. Like, it's pretty good, and again, it has Tommy Jarvis, the hero we deserve.
It also has. It's got Crispin Glover.
It's also got Crispin Glover, and we need to have the biggest tangent. It's just the big tangent in which we need to talk about Crispin Glover's dance moves. You explain it. I can't explain it. They are too divine for mankind to understand.
Apparently, according to people, my brother looks much like Crispin Glover. My brother cannot... I've never seen him dance, I don't think. But this is probably how he would dance. He does a sort of spastic robot.
There's a scene in this film.
Seizure.
There's a scene in this film where all these teens, who include a very young Crispin Glover, are sort of playing music, and they're all dancing. And then Glover gets up and starts dancing with people, and then he starts performing some of the most beautifully inexplicable dance moves I can explain. He does not dance like how normal people dance. It is like... He dances at 90-degree angles is the best way I can put it. Because every move is him basically snapping his arms into different configurations of 90 or 180-degree angles. It is like a more extreme and angular and herky-jerky version of the robot, and it is... The audio medium of podcasts cannot do Crispin Glover's dancing in this film justice. You simply have to see it for yourselves. I can't explain...
All right.
I am Morpheus in this situation. No one can tell you what Crispin Glover's dance moves in Friday the 13th, the final chapter are. You simply have to see them for yourselves.
I believe that scene would only be made better as if we used Crispin Glover's masterpiece of an album, Angelic to the Core, over it.
No, Corey Feldman,
yeah.
Crispin Glover, sadly, has not recorded an album. He should.
He should.
I want to hear his album.
Corey Feldman. It's like this movie stars Corey Feldman of Angelic to the Core fame. Not Goonies, but just his music career.
Corey Feldman of Corey Feldman's musical career.
No, but
I mean, this does still have its like weird moments in this film. This has the banana lady scene.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain the banana lady scene?
Or just a random hitchhiker who got killed by Jason and squeezed a banana really tight.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. The banana lady is in this movie. I don't understand why the banana lady is in this movie. She just is. Also, why does this house have like silent movie era smut? Because they have a film projector and they're staying up and they're watching like silent early 1900s.
I mean,
like smutty stripping. And it's like, where do you get like early film era smut from? Like, there's an entire subsection of film history to dissect here, and I'm not sure I wanna, because I think YouTube would probably take our channel down if we did.
I feel like, so Crispin Glover and his relationship with the stoned guy who just watches the smut is really wholesome, and that's kind of funny.
Again, it's like decent, it's like, this one's got like, really, it's got good characterization, it's got like...
And it's got the great Crispin Glover death scene. Hey, Tim, or hey, Ted, where's the corkscrew?
Yeah. And you can imagine what happened next. But yeah, This one has like good atmosphere. This one has good gore.
Jason teleports.
Jason starts teleporting in this film. This is like the first time. This is going to be something that happens. Jason just starts suddenly. There are shots where like Jason will just disappear and then reappear behind a person, which is going to really start happening later in the franchise. But We also get a good ending that's kind of a redux of 2, but in a very unique way. Because it's Tommy essentially using... Because in the end, it kind of comes just down to Tommy and Trish Jarvis, who are still alive. And what Tommy does is that as Trish is being menaced by Jason, he goes up and puts his horror movie makeup effects skill to good use and disguises himself not as Pamela Voorhees, but as a young childhood Jason. And, like, uses it to screw with his head. And that buys enough time for sort of his sister to attack Jason. Of course, you get the classic moment of, like, the killer coming back. But then Tommy just grabs Jason's machete and starts beating him to death with it.
There's, like...
and it's genuinely shocking.
Like, a mechanical, like, face of Jason when he gets stabbed, and he slides his face down the machete. It's so good. Whereas, like,
It's gross. It's like some of Tom Savini's most genuinely stunning work. Like, and then there's the ending of the film, which is just goddamn weird.
Where, you're not... Rob going, he's killing me, he's
killing me. The most on the nose final words in film history. It's just like, you can't make it any more obvious than, oh no, he's killing me. Well, we presumed that, Rob. We're watching the movie. He's killing you. I think we saw.
Or were we talking about how Corey Feldman or Tommy Jarvis is going to be the new Jason?
This movie tries to set up Tommy Jarvis to be the new Jason, because at the end of the movie, it's just like Jason embracing this, like, basically, like, spaced out, like, completely traumatized Tommy in the hospital, and he's shaped to look like a young Jason, and then it just zooms in on his face, and we hear, like, the
This is actually the first...
And it's a weird ending.
This is the first one that does not end with a
There's
jump scare.
There's not a jump scare
but
at the end
we
of
did
this.
see there was a deleted scene where there was a jump scare where they find their mom in the bathtub and it was all a dream sequence, and Jason's behind them and the mom's eyes open and they're white and they're terrifying.
Yeah, the sequence is kind of creepy. It
we
felt a little excessive, but it's...
We did talk about 3's jump scare at the end. We see Jason... Pamela Voorhees jumps out of the water in that one. So the first one...
Jason jumps out of the water. Second one, Jason jumps out of a window. Third one, Pamela Voorhees jumps out of the water.
And then the fourth one is just Corey Feldman looks at the camera.
Corey Feldman looks at the camera creepy.
And Corey Feldman is actually in the sequel, briefly. Shot in his backyard, which brings us to part 5. Oh, really quick. Did we say if we would recommend part 3? I don't think we did that.
I think we did. We did.
Oh, we did? All right, part 4.
Yes, absolutely. If you have to watch, honestly, any Friday movie as, like, an intro to the franchise, this needs to be the one. This is the best of the early ones. This one has enough of a recap at the start for you to be able to jump straight into it without, like, having to watch the previous films. And this one, like, if you want, like, just a film that's going to give you an idea of what the Friday the 13th franchise is and one that's done the best out of the traditional ones, this is the one to watch. This is, like, the best of the conventional Friday films.
Jason has his mask.
It's so well directed.
There's 2 great groups of, like, the normal teenagers and actual families, people you care about.
There's pretty good acting in this.
Decent acting. It's got everything you would expect in a Friday movie done to its best. And so I would say technically, this might be the best.
This might be the best one.
Maybe.
I don't know if it's my favorite. We'll get to my favorite pretty soon.
But I 100% recommend this to people who want to understand what the series is about. So part 4 is the final chapter.
Is great. This is one of my favorite ones. You should watch it.
I'm glad they kept going after it, but if
this was really the final chapter, I'd be completely satisfied because then it would have ended on, like, the best one.
Right.
Because this is the best of the first 4 for me.
It is. Anyway, part 5, we continue the Jarvis trilogy.
So anyways, after the final chapter, we move on to Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, released, again, less than 1 year later in 1985. And the last film was directed by Joseph Zito, who's this kind of cult favorite, like, slasher director who did this, like, very, like, underrated and actually pretty good slasher called The Prowler. This one is Danny Steinman, who started his career out doing porn.
Yep.
There's no way to get around this. And this is also, we're going to get into this, but this is, like, one of a couple weird outliers in the series. Because this is one of only 2 Friday movies. I think can we just say it right off the bat? I think we could just say it right off the bat. This is one of only 2 Friday movies where Jason Voorhees is not the killer. Because in this one, it is, we're taking almost, like, I guess you could say the Spiral route, where it's literally a copycat killer using Jason's MO.
And I honestly, a lot of people hated that. I didn't. I used to like this movie more than I do now.
This movie has problems. I don't think Copycat Jason is one of them.
No, I like it enough. I think what this works as best would be like a short prequel to Part 6 that explains why Part 6 opened the way it did. Like, why Tommy Jarvis is now so obsessed to make sure Jason is dead. Because now, like, he just had to fight Jason all over again.
Yeah. So basically, the premise of this also is a very different setting than the previous movie. Because basically, this opens on this opens on like a teenage Tommy Jarvis, who is now played by John Shepard instead of Corey Feldman. This takes place a few years after the end of the final chapter, where Tommy Jarvis is just severely psychologically shattered from his run with Jason. He barely speaks. He doesn't really interact with anybody. He's just like completely off by himself, like haunted by just hallucinations of Jason. Tommy is just broken at this point, and it is like,
but he is a kung fu expert.
He has just gone through multiple psychiatric hospitals at this point, and he eventually ends up at the Pinehurst Halfway House, which is just like this kind of halfway house in like the middle of the woods, filled with like these very eccentric teens who all kind of have issues, who all kind of have their own psychological issues. I kind of listed like all the stuff with like Tommy and like his trauma is like, this is proto Halloween 2018,
right?
Like what that movie ends up doing. What that movie ends up doing with Laurie Strode is, I think, a more complete and probably better executed version of what this ends up doing with Tommy Jarvis.
Right.
I think we also need to mention that they blow up the titles again. They keep blowing up the titles. He can't keep getting away with this. This is turning me into fucking Jesse Pinkman.
The title card, like,
explodes.
The mask flies into it, and then
it explodes again. They keep exploding, and this isn't even the weirdest thing that happens to the titles in this franchise.
So this movie starts with Corey Feldman in his backyard, but it's supposed to be Camp Crystal Lake. It's a dream, and it basically starts like Part 6 will start later. And Jason in his dream comes back to life. Then we cut to like a police station. There's the policeman reading pornography, then the title cards, and then this one has basically what happens is people start getting murdered at a house.
At this halfway.
But
the first person to kill
halfway house is that
halfway house, yeah. And the first person who gets killed isn't even a Jason victim. It is just that like
jarring.
one of the. It's this bizarre scene where there are two teens at this halfway house. We have this kid. We have Joey, who's like this sort of compulsive eater, and then Vic, who's this like severely like this kid with severe anger issues. At one point, Joey has this scene where he's just trying to pawn off a candy bar on, like a chocolate bar on people in exchange for like favors, and then he keeps trying to offer Vic this chocolate bar, and this pushes Vic over the edge so hard he just inexplicably grabs an axe and murders Joey. He just kills this kid over a chocolate bar. I don't think that's how mental illness works. I don't think that's how anything works. It's just this strange, out-of-nowhere act of violence that just kickstarts the plot. And so Vic's, like, arrested and pulled off. Like, the cops are clearly, like, a little shocked by this. But then as soon as Vic is pulled off,
more murders
start happening. Seemingly with the classic MO of the Voorhees murders.
And that's actually something I like about this movie, is it brings back the whodunit.
It's a little bit more of a mystery than the previous ones.
Like, and yeah, I enjoy who is the killer. It doesn't do it, like, exceptionally well, but it's there, and I like that. The characters in this are interesting. Because they are more Rob Zombie, angry white trash than I am used to in these
Except
movies.
for the black characters. Except for Reggie and Demon.
Reggie.
There's just a character in this named Demon.
Ooh, baby. Ooh. Yeah.
He dies during a diarrhea attack.
Alright, we should just talk about that. There was a kill in this movie where that
There's the toilet kill. There's the diarrhea musical duet kill, which is the most bizarre sequence of words I've ever had to fucking string together to describe any of these movies. And I had to describe Leprechaun in the Hood. You explain the toilet kill. You explain the toilet kill, because I'm not doing it.
So Reggie is his name, right? The kid?
No, Demon.
No, but
okay, Reggie
his cousin.
is the kid.
Reggie, so his grandpa works at the halfway house. That's why he lives there. His cousin
is named Demon.
And he had bad food, so he goes to the toilet.
He had, like, bad enchiladas,
he goes
specifically.
to, like, a public toilet, like an outhouse.
And then he starts singing.
And, no, his girlfriend, Demon's girlfriend, goes out and starts going, ooh, baby, and then Demon
He's
starts
singing
going,
along.
Ooh, baby.
They're doing a musical duet on the toilet.
That is,
It's bizarre enough already, and then Jason shows up.
Jason
in air quotes.
Right, yeah, it's a weird choice for this movie.
There's a lot of weird choices in this movie. There's another cat scare. There's a bunny jump scare. There's a jump scare where a bunny jumps out at someone.
But yeah, second cat scare.
It's also weird because it's like one of the least gory Friday movies. There's like a lot of off-screen kills in this one.
And it's got a reputation for being one of the sleaziest, but I don't think it's much
Oh no,
more
it's not
sleazy
that.
than
It's not
part
that
4.
sleazy. Oh no, the remake. The remake is the sleaziest of all of them.
I think this one has the reputation because of the directors.
Just because the director's involved in porn. Really, this one's kind of tame compared to other
And also the
Fridays.
characters are very white trash.
Yeah, the characters are again very Rob Zombie.
Right.
There's greasers in this movie for some reason. There's greasers fixing a car for some reason.
There's greasers in 8 briefly.
Why do greasers keep showing up in these movies?
But it's good to see that Tommy Jarvis, he kept his fascination with horror masks. And,
He still has those horror masks, which is cool.
This movie says that Jason was cremated, but we know that's a lie.
Oh, that's a lie, because we're gonna see he's not cremated in the next movie. He's cremated, but then he's uncremated.
Even though this movie isn't super violent compared to some of the other ones, it is very violent. There is that really
It's
good...
still pre-violent, but a lot of the kills are off-screen.
There's one good kill with, like, the belt. He puts a belt around a guy's eyes against a tree.
He goes for the eyes a lot.
Yeah,
in this movie.
likes eyes.
He likes the eye kills a lot in this movie.
And another thing I love about this movie is just that Tommy Jarvis has just become the silent, like, badass who just kicks everyone's ass when he has to. He's just like, he just knows how to fight.
Keep in mind, this is also the movie where somebody tries to run Jason over with the bulldozer.
Yeah.
And then attacks him with the chainsaw.
And there's another great dance sequence in this.
There's another good dance sequence. I don't think it's on the same level as the Crispin Glover one. There's a song playing on it called His Eyes by Pseudo Echo, which is kind of thematically fitting for the film. I'm not going to count it as a plot recap song because it's not actively written for the film. I'll consider it an honorary one because we mentioned plot recap songs back in the Sleepaway Camp episode. We're going to get to a really, really good plot recap song. We're going to get to a song that's like the gold standard for plot recap songs pretty soon, but it's not in this movie. His Eyes is not technically a plot recap song, but it's a good song otherwise, and I do like that one. The dance moves are a little low effort compared to Crispin Glover's, though, but any dance moves are going to be low effort compared to Crispin Glover's.
So anyway, the twist is the killer, spoiler alert, is
Roy Burns.
Roy Burns, the father
of the dead kid.
The dead kid
who was so traumatized by seeing his son dead that he decided, I'm going to become Jason Voorhees.
And I love that Roy Burns is a playable character in the Friday the 13th video game. You could just play as like a medic who just
became Jason.
And honestly, like, he's got a new mask. It's like blue instead of the red markings.
Yeah,
I like him.
This one's a weird. It's a weird. Yeah, this one's a weird outlier. I'm not sure I'm as much of a fan of this as other people. It kind of. I think part of it's that it comes between like two of the Friday movies that I really like the most.
That is true.
And it's also it just kind of doesn't compare them. I think it's also like it's weirdly paced. The characters are like a little aggressive, and they're not like the kind of characters I'm usually that invested in a film. I think like a lot of like sort of the toned down like. It has less atmosphere and, like, less shock value than I think the previous films do. It's like, it feels a lot milder.
And one of the bigger problems with this one is also just that it's skippable. Like,
yeah, it doesn't really add anything. You don't really need...
In terms of the Jarvis trilogy is what I mean. Like,
yeah.
1 and 6 could be their own duology. You don't need 5. 5 could be, a short... that leads into 6, because this leads into 6 well enough to explain
I
why
mean,
Tommy
the ending
goes
of this
out there.
is basically just an expanded version of the ending of 4, where they once again keep trying to set Tommy Jarvis up to be the next Jason, which is funny because in the next movie they just throw that out the window. That there is the next movie is like, oh yeah, Tommy Jarvis is not going to be the next Jason. That's a dumb idea.
And they tried
Which
the
it
same
is.
thing with
Tommy
Halloween.
making Tommy Jarvis the next Jason is dumb.
And they tried the same thing with Jamie Lloyd in Halloween, and it also went nowhere. But the question is, do you recommend this?
This isn't one of my favorites. Like, this probably ranks pretty low as far as these go. I think I'd say if you're a completionist, watch it, but definitely skip it because this becomes in between the best made of the series and the one we're going to talk about next, which I have a lot to say about the one we talk about next, and a lot of it is really good. Most of it's really good.
I would not recommend this to most people. But there are definitely some people I would recommend it to who are fans of slashers. I think it's adequate. It's definitely, my opinion of it has soured.
Yeah, it's pretty adequate.
It's fine.
You know what we can say isn't adequate, though? You know what we can say isn't adequate? Like a film that is very much above adequate.
6.
The next film, released 1 year later, in 1986, Tom McLaughlin's Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. And I'm just to say this right off the bat, this is my favorite of the Friday movies. This is, for me, the best Friday... This is probably the best Friday movie, and it's also my favorite. And this is the one where the series decides, okay, we've played it safe long enough. We're gonna take this franchise, and we're gonna swing for the fences and do crazy shit with it. And what we're gonna start with is... fuck Jason Voorhees being human. Jason Voorhees is straight up a supernatural monster now. He is just he is not a human killer anymore. He is an undefeatable avatar of death itself. And he cannot be killed by human means. He will just get up and he will keep on killing because it is all he knows. It is his entire purpose of being. He is so strong that mortality itself cannot even stop him. And this is my favorite Jason. This is the Jason that is most interesting to me, because, like, Jason as a human killer is fine, but Jason as just, like, this... If Michael Myers is, like, the embodiment of, like, evil, as, like... As Don Pleasance puts it in the Halloween films, then Jason Voorhees is, like, the embodiment of just death itself. He is, like, mortality incarnate. He just comes for you. You cannot stop him, really. You can just buy time. And that is a much more... There's even films later on where they'll hint, like, Jason is just kind of the Curse of Crystal Lake made incarnate. He's not even really a zombie, like, more of a revenant.
Yeah,
and
he, like, teleports and...
That's cool. That's my favorite take on Jason. That's, like, right off the bat, it's like, that's the thing the series needed to click with me.
You'll also talk
That's what makes it special.
You'll also talk about later, but there's, like, a script that was unmade where he is,
We'll talk about the unmade script for Friday the 13th 3D, and that unmade script is actually awesome. And I wish they'd made that script.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think we need to talk about Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. So, like I indicated before, this brings back Jason. Because the opening of this movie is that Tommy Jarvis is now all grown up, and his actor has changed again. The previous actor, John Shepard, has left the franchise because he became a born-again Christian and was really disliked the level of violence. So they changed him out for Tom Matthews, who horror fans will probably know as Freddy from Return of the Living Dead, another really great 80s horror movie. And one that kind of shares a lot of tone in this, but we'll get back to that later. So after the events at Pinehurst, Tommy is out of the mental institution.
He escaped it.
He escaped. He escaped. He's still having these visions of Jason, and he's decided, I'm going to go back to Crystal Lake. I'm going to go to Jason's grave. I'm going to dig him up. I'm going to confront his body, and I'm going to be sure he's dead. So his friend, he and his friend Alan,
his Alex Winter look like
his friend Alan, who he's just blackmailed into going along, who he's just coerced into going along with him. They go to Crystal Lake. They dig it up. Jason sees his corpse. Tommy sees Jason's corpse and freaks out. He just has severe PTSD flashbacks. Just grabs a metal fence post and just stabs it into Jason's body. And I should mention, this is a long intro. This takes longer for the title drop than most movies before the reboot. Like, This is a long intro. They are building it up, and he, like, just sticks this post into Jason's body just to be sure that, like, he is fucking dead. And we've had this very, like, Universal Monsters atmosphere for this.
Right,
Like,
right.
it's the middle of a storm. There's lightning flashing overhead. The wind is howling. We're in this gothic graveyard. It is very, like, 30s horror movie. And then lightning hits this fence post. And Jason just straight up rises out of the grave and comes back to life like Frankenstein's monster.
And kills the Alex Winter lookalike.
Yeah.
And
he just hits, and he just starts hitting the road, and then just does what Jason does, which is just start indiscriminately killing everybody he comes across.
And
whereas Tommy is just like, Tommy meanwhile runs afoul of this small town sheriff who is just
Mike
Crystal Lake
Garris.
has renamed Mike Garris, really named after Mick Garris. Like
Clearly
there's also a
named after
character.
John Carpenter.
There are characters in this named after John Carpenter. There's a lot of horror movie references.
No, it's a place. That one was like
Carpenter.
Lake.
There's a place named Carpenter after John Carpenter
Right.
because Tom McLaughlin is a huge horror nerd. The director of this is a huge horror nerd. But anyways, the sheriff of this town, which is now called Forest Green, because the sheriff has been very specific. Like, I am not letting the whole trauma of Jason happen again. This town is going to forget this happened if I force it to. And the sheriff is also a dick. Because this movie doesn't like cops. The cops in this movie are either just refuse to listen to reason until it's far too late, are innately suspicious of Tommy, just constantly blame him for Jason, and the sheriff even is just so overprotective of his daughter that he basically just starts accusing Tommy of shit because Tommy's falling in love with this guy's daughter and he doesn't like that.
So
And
it's
then,
like a
and then
Nightmare on Elm Street.
and then there's also his deputy, who has a giant fuck-off magnum that he is just trying to get into fights as an excuse to shoot someone with it. So basically, the cops in this are just violent, aggressive lunatics.
What's his name? Deputy Champagne or something? Deputy, hold on, I have it right here. Deputy,
Rick Cologne. His name is
Cologne.
Rick Cologne, which is a Thomas Pynchon character name if ever I saw
Such a
one.
good name.
But yeah, so
will
basically
stroke
Tommy.
later.
So Tommy runs afoul of these asshole cops who are running Forest Green, which was Crystal Lake. Don't want anybody digging up his shit. And then once the murders start happening, immediately suspect that Tommy is the killer. And meanwhile, Tommy ends up sort of teaming up with with the sheriff's daughter, who's sort of working at the revived Crystal Lake, now Camp Forest Green, to try and stop Jason as Jason's just going on this murder spree. So it's a different plot than sort of your usual Friday the 13th film. It's less straightforward slasher, and it's got like more suspense elements to it. But that's not like the big difference between this. What sets this apart from the other Friday movies is that this is funny as hell, and it is intentionally so. This is a fully self-aware slasher movie to the point where years later, screamer Kevin Williamson is going to look at this film and use it as the direct inspiration for a script called Scream.
Right.
This is the original self-aware horror movie. And, self-aware horror movies are hard to do. You have to hit a right balance between, not making it too much of a comedy that's just, wink, wink, nudging at the audience and pointing out too many of the tropes. And balancing that with, the actual scariness of it. And this does that really well. To the point where it's, very clear that this is kind of like a proto-Scream.
And the tone is clear right off the bat. It starts out as a Universal horror movie, and then Jason enters.
Jason
in a Bond
does the
intro.
James Bond intro. That's the title sequences gave up on explosions, and they somehow got weirder.
And it is.
That's
jarring.
the tone. That's the tone. It's just completely tongue in cheek, but it's still a horror.
And your enjoyment of this movie will depend on whether or not that kind of humor works for you. For me, it works.
It works. It's great. There's a lot of great gags in this. There's one gag where the crazy drunken old caretaker of the cemetery is wonder why people keep up digging at Jason's body. And then he just turns and stares straight at the camera as he's like, some folks have a very funny idea of entertainment. Just it's completely self-aware. And what I love about the tone is that kind of as this goes on, it starts out more like wacky comedy. You have this whole 5-minute scene of people playing paintball in the woods and being hunted down by Jason. And there's a lot of very weird visual gags where Jason is just Jason throws a guy into like a tree, and his blood leaves like a smiley face, and then like Jason is just like holding like a machete in his hand, and he lifts up, and it's like the machete is still in like the guy's severed arm, and it's like these very wacky jokes, but as it goes on, it starts to turn more and more to horror as like the fact like Jason is just unstoppable becomes clearer and clearer, and that I love. I adore that.
I agree. Zombie Jason is the definitive Jason.
Zombie Jason is like, it's the definitive Jason. We're not going to get to the definitive Jason actor yet. That's next movie.
This is the one of the first.
But the Jason actor in this is good. CJ Graham is like, there's a lot of actors that have played Jason, and like it's definitely good to like give respect to a lot of them who have played like Jason. They kind of get underrated, save for like a certain one we'll get to later. But CJ Graham is kind of one of my favorite Jasons. Like the guy who plays him in this is a former military veteran, and he has this like real sense of like physical ability and menace to him. He kind of does genuinely feel supernatural, like. And it mixes well with, like, a lot of these great jokes. Like, the kills are a little more, like, slapstick than before. There's a little bit more, like, dark comedy in them, but they're effective. There's a lot of great visual humor in this, as well as, like, lines. There's one of my favorite jokes in the whole movie is that we just get this shot of, like, the kids at Camp Forest Green just sort of all asleep in their beds, and they have, like, different books in them. And then one kid's just reading No Exit by Jean-Paul Sartre.
And that is an important thing to mention. This is the
has
first
kids.
time that the camp has been truly been open in this series.
There are actual kids at Camp Crystal Lake. And they're actually good child actors. Like, this film got some really good child actors in this.
This is the most quotable of the series.
This is the most
What did you want to be when you grew up?
What did you want to be when you grew up?
Such a good line.
I think we're dead meat.
And we do learn that, like, you know, Jason has a heart. He doesn't want to hurt the kids.
He doesn't hurt kids. Like, Tom McLaughlin has been very on the record. Like I've read a bunch of interviews and sort of seen some commentary stuff with Tom McLaughlin in this, and he's, like, very clear about what he wanted from this franchise. He came in with a very specific idea that he was going to bring it back to this like more dark comedy, tongue-in-cheek, universal monster movie inspired take on it, but still like hit this balance between like comedy and actual horror. And it's actually scary. I also like to state that this is also a really well-made film visually. Like, this has a lot of really great nature shots, a lot of great atmosphere, and there's like singular visual moments.
The RV scene.
There is a scene where Jason attacks some teenagers in an RV, and it has some great horrifying visual gags, like one where Jason throws someone into the side of the RV so hard it just makes the imprint of their face in it. But then it ends with like just this character getting stabbed in the RV, turning out of control and flipping over onto the side of the road and igniting. And then it just cuts to this shot of Jason standing stock still atop this flaming, tilted over RV, and it is genuinely the most terrifying image of the series. It is just like this stunning, like unnerving image, and it is striking, and it like hits the balance of this film so hard, and it reveals what works so well for me. That in the span of a few minutes, it's gone from like a really effective comedy to some of the scariest stuff in the franchise, and it does it so well without missing a beat. That's why I like this one. That's why this is my favorite one.
Everything with the RV and the discount John Travolta character and whatnot. It's like
it's also the least horny event. It's still horny, but there's like less.
There's so many good dirty jokes in this movie.
There's a lot of dirty jokes, but they're jokes. It's like less on-screen nudity. It's like probably the least. It's like the least exploitative of them. It's playing up because McLaughlin has openly said that in interviews that he doesn't really like the whole sex equals death aspect of slashers. So he kind of takes it and still keeps it as part of the Friday formula, but in this he turns it into like a lot of weird visual gags and like weird jokes.
Just like a lot of adult jokes that are just
a lot of adult jokes that are genuinely funny. Like they're dirty, but they're funny. This one I hesitate to use the phrase banger, but this one's a banger.
A certified hood classic.
Speaking of bangers, we need to talk about the Alice Cooper song, He's Back, the Man Behind the Mask. Because Alice Cooper wrote an original song for this movie that is a plot recap of this movie. And now the gold standard of plot recap songs
Pet Sematary by the
is
Ramones.
still Pet Sematary by the Ramones. That song is a masterwork. There is also like Killer Clowns from Outer Space by the Dickies. That's very high. This song is like top 3, maybe top 5 plot recap songs. This song is like a gold standard. It hits hard. It even works Harry Manfredini's musical cues into it. It even uses that key, ma, as an instrument in a rock song.
It's like when they did the Spiral. 21 Savage did the Spiral song.
Working
and they
in
remixed the actual theme.
It's awesome. I love that song. It's a very fun song. Also, I think we need to talk about the ontological implications of this, because there is a scene in this film where we have like these counselors at not Crystal Lake, having a discussion about like the history of Crystal Lake and sort of Jason Voorhees. And in the background, playing on their radio, is He's Back, the Man Behind the Mask by Alice Cooper, which raises some questions. Is this song written about the Jason Voorhees massacres? Is this like offensive or in poor taste? Wasn't this just like a couple of years ago? Isn't this like if like nowadays someone released like a rock song about 9/11? Like a rock song about like how scary and terrifying like the 9/11 hijackers are.
The man who
flew into the Twin Towers.
Yeah,
and that's like what it is. I mean, wouldn't that be insensitive? Wouldn't people be like the families of like
Alice Cooper's no stranger to controversy.
Alice Cooper's no stranger to controversy, but this is like crossing a line even for him. Like even so, like the other, but that's the easy interpretation. The hard interpretation of this is like, does Alice Cooper know about what the events are going to be in this film? Is Alice Cooper trying to warn them? Does Alice Cooper have precognitive abilities in the Friday the 13th franchise? How did he get this song made? Is this just like the film trying to contact them? Is this like a message from the future? Which is weird, because the other film that has like an Alice Cooper song about that film playing in the film is John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness, and that's a film all about weird psychic messages sent from the future trying to warn the characters of what's going to happen. What is going on here? This is a conspiracy board moment.
It's so meta, especially with a character named Carpenter, or Garrus, a town called Carpenter. Someone wears a baker shirt. Like, this is a meta movie.
There's a lot of like meta references in this one. This is completely like it's a tongue-in-cheek love letter to the Friday franchise. It's not a film that's like necessarily making fun of it because it thinks it's dumb. It's a film that's poking fun at it like from a very affectionate place, while also saying, hey, this franchise kind of has fallen into a rut. Let's bring in something totally new that's going to reinvigorate this. And that is why it is my favorite Friday film, because this is the one that actually steps out of its comfort zone, takes the risks, and decides, you know what, I'm not going to just try to give the fans what they want. I'm going to give something that's unique and it's fun, and it works. It's the most entertaining one because it just doesn't feel beholden to the formula.
I remember hearing, actually, they said you can make it as funny as you want, you can make fun of whatever you want, but not Jason. Because Jason is not really the punchline.
And that's why it works, because none of the jokes are ever at Jason. It's like the jokes are there, but they never make Jason any less threatening. Jason is still scary regardless of the jokes.
It's what makes a good
That's what works, because it's like the jokes are there, but they never remove any sense of threat. It's like Evil Dead 2, where like the Deadites are still really threatening, but they're also funny.
It's what makes a good horror comedy so hard. You know, like, it's hard to make a really good horror comedy, but, like, Evil Dead 2 and this...
This one is, like, a good one. This one's, like, a very underrated horror comedy.
They are actually making a horror movie.
Yeah.
But there is
It's
comedy.
a horror movie that's also funny.
And it's very hard to do, and I respect it, and this is definitely a top-tier Jason film. Moving on, yes?
Recommendation. Do you recommend this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I recommend this too. This is my favorite.
If you're a fan of Evil Dead 2, you should watch
this.
If
you're a fan of Evil Dead 2, or probably more specifically, if you're a fan of Scream, watch this one. Because again, this is like the blueprint for what's going to become Scream. And like, that's kind of cool seeing one... Because Friday the 13th is a slasher franchise that's inspired by another slasher franchise. So seeing it, in turn, like, inspire another kind of slasher franchise, that's cool. You're seeing, like, this family tree of horror, like, branching out, and, like, this inspiring its own movies in turn, which is awesome.
Oh, I forgot, there were two more things I wanted to mention about this movie. This has one of the better examples of a secondary villain, because these movies don't always have secondary villains.
Yes, the asshole cop.
Asshole cop Garrus is a very good, somewhat endearing, because he it's for his daughter.
He does care about his daughter,
So
but
he's
at the
not-
same time, he's totally just like...
He's despicable but not unlikable.
Yeah, as opposed to his deputy, who's just an asshole.
Yeah, who shows up, we'll talk
Who's
about
just
later.
a police brutality asshole. Like,
yeah.
This movie really does not like cops.
I mean...
I wonder why.
Deputy McGarris, the guy we're talking about, did point a gun at Tommy Jarvis when he just opened a door the first time he saw him. Tommy Jarvis ran in, like,
this
help.
movie's in this. If this
Puts a
movie
gun
has a
at him.
message, it's like cops
F the
are
police.
like it's this movie's message is fuck the police. Like this movie is in some ways ahead of its time.
And also, the other thing I want to mention is that the score, again by Harry Manfredini, is this the first time they introduced that? What's the song called from The Shining? The dun dun.
Dies Irae. They openly use sort of Dies Irae in it because
and they bring it
because
back.
it's I'll get to why they bring it back in the 7th, because the 7th just apparently recycles a lot of the score from previous movies, which is why Manfredini's credited, even though most of the score is written by somebody else, because they just kind of use it. But the Dies Irae in this is like very specifically used because like Tom McLaughlin again wanted that like retro horror feel. He's like, I want to use some classical pieces to get that feel.
Yeah. The director says you should watch this in black and white, maybe.
I think we should watch it. I want to watch it in black and white at some point. I think it'd probably look pretty, because it's like got very high contrast like photography. It'd probably look pretty good in black and white.
No, I agree. So we both recommend this one.
Highly recommend this one.
Moving on to part 7.
Friday the 13th, part
versus
7.
Carrie.
The New Blood. I need to sort of mention some of the production story behind this, because the production story behind this one, it gets wild. Because, so a new production team takes over on this one. We get a new producer involved in this. We get producer Barbara Sachs, who is trying to find a new take on Friday, because they aren't bringing their original intention for this was actually they were going to we're going to do a big crossover film between Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street, and that's just silly. There's no way that would ever happen. There's no way they'd ever do that, so they just obviously threw it out the window, because that would never happen. And instead, Barbara Sachs and the rest of the producers decided, we're going to look for a premise for this film. And then they initially pitched like kind of like Friday the 13th with a Jaws kind of spin, where we have land developers trying to build condos on Crystal Lake, and like Jason's rampage cutting through them. And then the screenwriter brings up, okay, we have final girls in all these movies. What if we made the final girls psychic? What if we did basically Jason versus Carrie? Yep. Barbara Sachs loved this idea. Barbara Sachs loved this idea to the point where she thought this is going to be the first really respectable Friday the 13th film. Barbara Sachs loved this idea to the point where she thought this is the first Friday the 13th that is going to win an Academy Award. Barbara Sachs loved this idea to the point where she tried to get Federico goddamn Fellini to direct this movie. I want to meet Barbara Sachs because she saw it's amazing. This is crazy, and I love it.
She and I saw the same thing in this movie. I love this movie. And also...
she also brings in as direct... She does not get Federico Fellini. She eventually has to sell for John Carl Buckler, who is probably more known as a special effects guy. He is very heavily known for working, especially for being the in-house effects guy for Roger Corman, and especially Charles Band. You see his work on stuff like From Beyond and Reanimator, most notably. Less notably, stuff like he directed The Ghoulies. He directed the original Troll pre-Troll 2.
Masterpiece.
So he died relatively recently, sadly, but he was sort of well known for like doing these fairly high quality effects on low budget films, and this is one of the films he actually got to direct. And it is again basically Jason versus Carrie.
So, something funny about this movie, according to the timeline, this takes place in 2001. This was made in 88, so...
Our timeline has gone so out of whack at this point.
But this movie is basically, it starts out with
It doesn't really
It
start
starts
out.
with a narration.
It starts with
that
narration
explains stuff.
explaining Jason, and this movie's explanation for Jason is something that is really cool, and I am disappointed the rest of the movie doesn't use it, which is that it explicitly presents Jason as, like, he is just, like, this... the horror and the curse of Crystal Lake made flesh. That he isn't a zombie. That he isn't even, like, a kind of creature that we can really understand in terms of regular monsters. That he's just something else.
Very cosmic.
Very cosmic Jason is the most interesting take on Jason. I'm disappointed that no movie, even this one, has really used it. And then Jason's tombstone explodes.
Oh yeah, that's how they open it.
Because they move on from the title exploding to just blowing up Jason's tombstone. Because they have to blow up something.
In this movie, so what it's about, it's more or less kind of like a retread of Part 4.
It's a retread of Part 4 with kind of a new Tommy Jarvis equivalent.
Right. Instead of Tommy Jarvis,
We have Tina Shepard.
Tina she's got psychic powers.
Yeah, Tina is psychic. She has telekinesis. She could just move things with her mind.
And her doctor told her, brought her back to Crystal Lake.
She's also like partially psychic. She can have visions of the future. Basically, for any of the fans who read X-Men, she's Jean Grey. She's Jean Grey pre-Phoenix, basically. Think of it like that.
And her doctor, Dr. Cruz, who is actually
a scumbag.
My favorite secondary villain of the franchise.
Is just completely exploiting
Played by Bernie from Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah, he's completely exploiting her. Because he is dragging her back to Crystal Lake, and she doesn't want to be there, because that's where her dad died. That's where more to the point, that's where she accidentally killed her father. Because what happens in the opening scene, in between some really bad acting from her dad, unfortunately, is that Tina's mom and dad are going through, like, really heated divorce proceedings. And Tina just, like, is a kid, and she doesn't know how to take it. And she runs out to the dock. And, like, her dad tries to go after her. She's hiding in a boat, and then she freaks out. And has this burst of psychic energy that breaks the pier her dad's standing on and sends him to the bottom of the lake.
And now,
which is also where Jason is. We should mention that at the end of... we completely forgot to mention the end of Part 6, which is the end of Part 6. Tommy kind of uses this weird, like, ceiling thing with, like, a ring of fire to trap Jason alive at the bottom of Crystal Lake, where he's just chained up. And, like, now, like, Tina's dad just dies in Crystal Lake, and Tina's traumatized with it. Again, it's extremely X-Men. It's, like, this is the... I can't believe I'm saying this. This is the most X-Men of the Friday the 13th. I'm very disappointed that this is not, like, an official... They did not make this an official X-Men crossover. Mainly because I would love to see what... Because this would be the 80s, so that would be Chris Claremont writing Friday the 13th, and I'd love to see that, but, again, this is basically just, like... This is completely some Jean Grey shit.
But why this is like a Part 4 is you got a family, or a group of teens. Your typical Friday group.
Fodder. And then you have, like, a
including
separate
guy who
character...
looks vaguely like Quinn, who's a sci-fi writer.
Don't compare me to him.
And
don't compare me to that jerk.
And then you got a family of
a separate family where it's like
house.
they have the true protagonist in it.
And this is so first I want to talk about the special features. We should mention this movie
has one of the most baffling special features I've ever seen on a DVD.
Well, more importantly, a lot of the gore and the violence
in
was
this
cut
movie
from the
is
FDA.
censored. And that's a shame, because this genuinely has, like, the best non-Savini effects of any film. Like, what Buckler's team is doing on this is incredible. And this has for me, the most horrifying death of any Friday scene. And if you're a Friday fan, you know what I'm talking about. You know it's the sleeping bag scene. The sleeping bags, it's just this shocking scene that in the film itself... Because this is the film that nearly got an NC-17 until they cut out most of the really hardcore stuff from the violence. But in the film itself, it's just this woman is alone in the woods in a sleeping bag, and then Jason, it just slowly comes up to her, grabs the sleeping bag, which she's hiding in, drags it out of the tent, and then swings it against a tree once, and it kills her. In the version that wasn't cut... Jason just takes the bag, and he starts swinging it against the tree, and he just keeps on swinging until you see, like, basically within the bag, like, blood burst, and, like, the entire other half of her body turn into just a bloody pulp. It is terrifying.
Like, when you look at the special, like...
And the kills in this are all so disturbing. They are like the most shocking kills in the whole franchise.
And it's so like, yeah, they're in the special features, but they're not transferred very well. They're all like just dailies.
Yeah, which is a tragedy because it's like most of that original footage is probably lost forever. We're never gonna get like the really extended version of the film, which is a shame because all those extended kills are actually shocking.
Yeah,
they're like some of the scariest ones in the whole franchise.
And they're probably my favorite. Like, my favorite kill of the franchise is Part 8. But as a whole collective, this might be my favorite if it wasn't cut.
If it wasn't cut down, which is like one of the tragedies of this film, because it got cut down.
The other
I think we needed... Oh, yeah.
The other
special feature is goddamn inexplicable.
Oh, yeah, it's just two psychic people.
It's a special feature that's like the truth about telekinesis. And it's two so-called researchers trying to use Friday the 13th Part 7 as proof that telekinesis is real. It's baffling. I don't know why they put this on a major DVD release.
Yeah.
Why is this there?
If you believe in that stuff, you might find it interesting.
If you believe in this stuff, good on you, but nah.
But you're wrong. Anyway,
Anyways, off from fake psychics, we need to talk about the elephant in the room. The man of the hour. The man who this franchise brings in. One of the most... The iconic actor of this franchise. Kane Hodder. This is the man who is going to be playing Jason for pretty much the rest of this continuity. He's going to be doing it for 4 films straight. Like, he's good. There is a reason why Kane Hodder is like well known as Jason, because Kane Hodder
Part 7, which is so
Kane Hodder's. He's in like the point where for me the series starts to drop off, and he's the saving grace of them because he is incredible as Jason.
So Tina accidentally brings Jason back to life
because
her
Bernie
father.
from Weekend at Bernie's, her shitty therapist, is just trying to get a rise out of her in order to get her like psychic powers to activate, which, god damn it, it's another X-Men parallel. That's extremely Professor X. That's some Professor X shit. Why does this movie have so many X-Men parallels? Maybe that's why I like it, because it's just very X-Men.
But yeah, she thinks she sees her father, like feels her father in the water, so she
tries to free him, and oops, well there goes Tommy Jarvis's work. Jason's out again.
And this is the best Jason in the franchise.
This is the coolest looking Jason in any of these movies. It's like this. He has this full-on rotting corpse in this movie. When he rises out of the water, he is just dripping wet. His mask is covered in like dirt and moss. You can see
like a big cut of it from Part 6.
There's a huge cut of it open. You can see like his
jaw.
face hanging open. Like when you see the back of him where his shirt's torn open, you can just see his spine exposed. He is just this like Kane Hodder plays him, he is just this slow, deliberate, lumbering force, just this rotting corpse animated by pure hate and violence. And he is the definitive Jason for me. This is my favorite Jason.
And when his mask falls off, he still almost every movie except for like maybe 1 or 2
has his mask come off, and every time he looks completely different.
And this one he looks the coolest. It's a typical zombie, but it's like a really cool looking zombie.
It's a really cool looking zombie, as opposed to the next movie where it's a really weird looking zombie.
Yeah.
Speaking of really weird, can we talk about the most inexplicable shot in film history?
Yeah, I was just gonna bring that up.
Okay, there is a shot in the scene, because we have like we have these usual teens. There's a plot with these teens where Tina's trying to befriend them, and they're just being jerks to her. There's this one girl who's just being a jerk.
Melissa or Melinda, something.
Yeah,
like that.
it was just being a jerk for her because she's like, because the guy she likes is falling for Tina, and this movie kind of turns a little bit into Mean Girls, and I mean that in the sense this is Mean Girls like the 6th movie is Footloose, which is, you can kind of see the parallels, but it's just exaggerated. But anyways, Tina is trying to fit in with these teens, and then we see these teens in the kitchen, and it leads to one of the most bizarre pieces of production design I've ever seen in a film. Like, let me set the stage for you. There's this woman who's in the kitchen, and she's preparing a pizza, and there's beer and soda cans. And this woman's wearing a jacket. But it's all in the details, because the beer cans are beer brand beer. There is no brand on them, they're just beer. The soda, you can't even tell what the logo is. I think it's like Sip or something. And like they're all different kinds of soda.
Lice soda?
It looked like either rice or lice. Which is not a good way. The pizza is horrifying. The pizza is just like lumpy. It's all drifted over to one side. I think it's like, it looks like it's covered in olives and pineapple. I don't like olives or pineapple on pizza, sorry to disappoint, but putting olives and pineapple together on a pizza is like incredibly unappetizing.
You don't like
for me.
Hawaiian pizza?
Yeah, I don't like Hawaiian pizza. There's clearly no sauce on this pizza. There is no hint of red on this pizza. It just looks like they've had olives and pineapple and just like generic fruitcake topping sprinkled over it, but they forgot the pizza. They forgot the sauce. So this pizza is horrifying. And that's even the weirdest part because of the woman's jacket. The woman's jacket has 4 separate patches with the Baby Bell cheese logo on it.
The laughing
and it's
cow.
like the laughing cow from the fucking Baby Bell cheese. And 3 of them are perfectly identical and are organized in a vertical stripe on like the right half of the jacket, and then there's a 4th one that's completely different and on that corresponding arm. What is going on with the production design in this movie?
It's just that one scene, though.
It's just that one shot. It's just like the
so
production
good.
design was like, okay, the director's not watching. We're gonna make this really weird.
And that is a weird scene. They got one of the characters just looks like Billie Eilish, which is I find funny.
And then a guy shotguns a beer, and it makes Tina have a flash forward of his death.
Yeah.
That's a weird ass scene.
Was that like meta? Because like beer equals death in these. I don't even know. Anyway.
I mean, Tina maybe has Jason vision.
Yeah, she's got Jason vision. Tina, honestly, I do like these characters. These are some of the more memorable characters
They're
for
fun.
me.
I don't think there is. I think I'm spoiled
Melissa.
for choice because I have 4 and 6, which are like the gold standards of characters. But they're fun.
I like Nick. I like Tina. I like Melissa. Well, I love to hate Melissa. She's a good tertiary villain.
Yeah.
I do.
I also really like some of the scares.
It's got one of the best scares in the franchise. Jump scares.
The jump scare. That it might have like actually my favorite jump scare in the whole franchise.
It's
you want to talk about it?
No. There is another cat scare in this movie, but
There's another cat scare.
The one we're talking about is a guy, Bill or Ben or something, goes to the kitchen, and there's lightning because it's a Friday movie, and we see in the corner of the room when the light flashes, Jason is just standing there, and it's very like blink and you miss it.
You just blink and you miss it. He's just like hidden in the background,
it's great.
and there's no music cue on it. He's just there, and then it holds on that shot on that shot from above as you see him going for it, and you just expect to see Jason approaching him from the back of the frame, and it just doesn't happen immediately. It's beautifully directed. And then there's the barn scene. The barn scene is terrifying.
The barn scene.
The scene in the barn where like she's trying to run away from Jason, and then Jason comes in. It's like
yeah.
Friday the 13th has a lot of quick shocks, but this one, in spite of like the weird X-Men-iness of this franchise, this is one of the ones that leans most heavily into just full-on suspense. Like this builds up its shocks. Like it lets things linger. And there's this scene where one of the characters is in a barn trying to run from Jason, and it's just so intentionally, agonizingly slow as just Jason is methodically waking his way through his barn, and she's just trying to hide from him. And it's like
she's trying to juke him out, in secret.
Juke him out, and it comes clearly on. Yeah, he knows she's there. He's
and he
just
busts through the wall.
That like gives me a good opportunity to talk about why Kane Hodder is like memorable in this film, because like Kane Hodder can do a lot with body language as an actor, and I think that's why he sticks around the longest as Jason, because like he has this really impeccable control of his body language as a performer. He
does have a pose.
He does like
he
the
does
pose.
a lot of posing in this.
He
movie.
does posing, but he has this like slowness and like deliberateness to his actions. It's like it's hard to describe without like watching the movie and like noticing the details of his performance. But it's like there's no in between state between like moving and staying still. Like when he starts, he just does not stop. It's like it's slow and methodical.
He's kind of like built for that scene, because like in part 3, I like part 3 Jason, but you got a hunchback. Part 2, he's just a hillbilly running. This one, he's built like a tank.
Jason is like true. This 6 and this
he's
make
built like
Jason,
an upside down triangle.
This series from now on, 6 and this are the best at making Jason feel truly inhuman.
Right.
And then on another one we'll get to later, but That one's gonna be the weird one. That one's where I get to drop my big hot take for this franchise.
But I do like the scares in this movie. The cat scare where why is there a cat in the closet?
I don't know why there's a cat in that closet.
Tina, I love the last 20 minutes where it's just Tina beating the crap out of Jason with her psychic powers.
And then Jason refusing to die over and over again.
It's so
Jason
fun.
gets so many fake out deaths in this movie. Like, you get that classic Scream, careful, this is where the killer comes back for one last scare scene. It happens so many times in this movie.
It's like when you play a video game and you keep on dying and you just get like this rage.
Jason's just playing Dark Souls. Jason's just playing Dark Souls.
He's trying to kill Tina, but Tina is just using her psychic abilities and keeps knocking him down, and it's so entertaining, and you can see how pissed he gets as it goes on. Like as the scene goes on.
And again, it's all in Kane Hodder's body language. That's
right.
like, again, it's like he does a lot with like a role that he can't even say anything. He can't even show his face. Like, that's like that would be a limitation for any other actor, but Hodder does that well, and he does like this. He just does it subtly with like body language that gives Jason a lot of character.
Yeah, I agree. And this is also a fairly quotable movie, not as quotable as 6 by any means, but I did like one of my favorite lines of the series is the character who looks like Quinn but is not Quinn by any means.
And because he's kind of creepy, he's kind of sketchy.
Well, what happened was Melissa is trying to make Nick jealous. So he tells, what's his name? We'll call him Henry. I'm sure that's not his name. He says, Henry, I like you. Trying to make the guy jealous. And they go up to her room. And then she says, I was lying. I was just trying to make Nick jealous. And Henry says, rejection, huh? I've been rejected from some of the finest science fiction magazines this side of the United States. I can handle rejection, and leaves.
Yeah, he's kind of a sketchy dude, but he just gets a very good line out of it.
And then he gets his head cut off, and then Tina uses his head to headbutt Jason, which is very satisfying. And then the movie ends with the weirdest way they could possibly end it. Tina's dead dad, zombie dad, comes back, grabs Jason, and drags him back under the dock out of nowhere.
I can't even say that feels like X-Men. That doesn't. That's too weird even for X-Men.
This is like part 4, but it's a little more playful. It's not as well directed, I don't think.
It's not like as good, I'd say, as part 4, but it still kind of has that charm to it. There's a lot of really weird. It's not as consistently well directed. It has some really well directed moments.
I think they have more fun with this one.
This one's like a little. It's kind of. It's 4, but it's still keeping like some of the weird tongue-in-cheek supernatural Jason elements from 6. I do like this one. Like, I don't like it as much as I like 4 and 6, but I think this one's like pretty high up as the franchise goes.
So I highly recommend this to people who are interested, because there's enough so bad it's good, and so good it's good, and so bad it's... There's just so much going on in this movie that I would recommend this for like a midnight movie, easily.
Yeah, it's chaotic in a very fun way. I kind of think I even like this one a little more than the original, because like I'm not sure though. I think the original is a little more, I'd say, polished than this, but this takes bigger swings, and I always like. And as you know from listening to this, I will always like a movie that takes like the weirder, bigger swings.
And if it wasn't cut down by the MPAA so much,
if it wasn't cut down by the MPAA, this would be like top 3 of the franchise easy.
Anyway, we're moving on to... You recommend it too? Yes?
I recommend it too. I do like this one.
Alright, good.
So with that, we are now on to the 8th film in the franchise.
Jason Takes a Yacht.
Jason Takes a Yacht. Or more accurately, Jason Takes Manhattan. Actually, not more accurately.
That's accurately.
Released in 1989, directed by Rob Hedden, who... this was his first film, actually. This was the first film he ever directed.
In this continuity... The year is 2000 and... Oh, wait, what?
Max?
This one says 98? I don't even know. The franchise...
We don't know. Time is broken at this point.
So this movie...
But since the last movie technically takes place in 2001, we know it can't be 2001, because the first shot of this movie is a shot of the Twin Towers.
Jason took Manhattan, not in that way. This is the longest one in the franchise so far.
It's nearly 2 hours long.
Well, it's hour 40. So, I guess technically. It's a very different opening. It starts with just footage of places we will see in Manhattan.
In New York.
Vancouver or
in
Toronto.
New York with like very classy looking tiles. And it's just like classy looking titles over this like slice of life over like sketchy 80s New York, where it's just like the back streets, just like people shooting up, just like.
And we saw in the credits there was a guy named Randolph Cheveldale in the movie.
Cheveldave.
Let me look. What he doing this? Randolph.
I think he was the
Cheveldave, producer. Yeah, he was a producer.
Randy Cheveldave.
Randolph Cheveldave,
Which is a great name.
But yes,
But yes, we start in this montage with like a radio DJ talking over all this footage of the different parts of New York. This on the street footage of like the different parts of New York, as if it is the film telling you, "Don't worry, we'll get to New York eventually," which it is. It is, because we get to New York eventually. Emphasis on the eventually.
and honestly, okay, I'm gonna get this out of the way. I think you agreed. Everything on the boat is better.
Yes, all the stuff on the boat with the... Because this is apparently... So here's the story behind this one, and why this one is a very strange movie in the franchise. The original project is John Carl Buckler, and also Lar Park Lincoln, the lead from Part 7, are working on separate versions of follow-ups to The New Blood. However, Paramount's like, oh, we're going to put a completely new director on this. This is like a former Universal guy who's making his directorial debut, whose big idea for the franchise is we need to get Jason out of Crystal Lake. His pitch, he gives 2 pitches to the studio. Rob Hedden gives 2 pitches. His first pitch is, we're going to put Jason on a boat. We're going to have like these little elements of like Das Boot, kind of make it a little bit in places feel like Alien with like a claustrophobic feel, like we're going to have a storm at sea, and it's all going to take place in the ocean. His other pitch is like, we're going to put Jason in New York, and we're going to make it really campy, and we're going to have like Jason go through all these like New York landmarks in like a very horror comedy way. So Paramount Pictures likes both of them. Paramount Pictures likes both of them so much that Rob Hedden decides, I'm going to make both of these in the same movie. So this is basically two essentially 45-minute movies in one.
I mean this,
and one of them is significantly better than the other.
I mean this in a loving way. They kind of, by putting them together, they kind of half-assed both, but more like they 3/4-assed the yacht stuff and only 1/4-assed the New York stuff.
The New York stuff is the actual titular Jason Takes Manhattan stuff is significantly worse than any of the stuff that comes before it. Can we go over the plot of this movie?
Well,
it's a very simple plot. It's a very simple plot. It's kind of all there in the title.
New Jersey.
So basically, Jason comes back from the bottom of Crystal Lake yet again. This time because some idiot kids hit a power line on the bottom of Crystal Lake, and that electrocutes him back to life because Jason just needs electricity to run. Jason just runs on electricity and hate.
Oh, so he's like the rabbit from Duracell.
That's Energizer.
Energizer Bunny. Yes.
Yeah. He's
Jason
the Energizer Bunny. He just keeps going, and Jason decided, okay, Jason is just going to kill people.
And he's got his new mask, which I think, because his mask broke in Part 7, but he got a new mask.
He has a brand new mask.
But I think, am I right?
That he steals from one of the teenagers.
Doesn't it still have that cut in it for some reason?
It still has the notch in it.
Which is weird. If it's a new hockey mask, it's still weathered. I guess people are making these masks? I don't even know.
Yeah, but anyways, he gets that mask, and then he just sneaks on board like a cruise ship.
Which is not... This is supposed to take place in New Jersey, right?
Your usual New Jersey to New York cruise ship.
Pacific Northwest, Vancouver, Puget Sound
It just looks
area.
like Vancouver at the start.
Yeah, the start is just like the Northwest. It is not New Jersey.
Yeah.
If it is,
so he ends up on like this boat that's called the SS Lazarus. This is not the only time we're gonna get really bluntly named ships in this franchise. We have our protagonist, who is Rennie McCullough, who is the niece of this who is like a graduating like high school student who is joining the rest of her senior class for this like celebratory like cruise on this boat. Their teacher is her uncle, and he's kind of a jerk.
The second best secondary villain.
He's just like kind of obnoxious. She's also got severe. He also drags her along. She's dragged along despite the fact that Rennie is severely aquaphobic. Also, Rennie maybe psychic. Rennie might be psychic because she has weird visions of Jason.
And I just want to point out the teacher. Her uncle's name is Uncle Charles, Isn't Uncle Charlie from Shadow of a Doubt?
Yeah, Uncle Charlie is from Shadow of a Doubt.
I don't
and
think
isn't
that's
there
a
also an
purposeful
Uncle
reference.
Charlie and Stoker?
Yes.
So we have 2 different movies about murderous Uncle
3.
Charlies.
Well, he's
3.
not murderous.
He's not murderous in this. He's just an asshole. He's just an asshole who will eventually prove to have been secretly responsible for her fear of water because he tried to get her to
almost
learn how to
drowned her.
swim by trying to forcibly drown her in Crystal Lake with the threat that if she can't swim, Jason is going to get her. And then she has a hallucination of Jason trying to get her, and that's why she's afraid of water, and also might be getting psychic visions of young Jason. That's never explained. Meanwhile, Jason's killing everybody in the boat. A few of them...
Including discount Crazy Ralph, but the second best Crazy Ralph.
Who's just like the steward on the ship. And then Jason takes the boat, and then the survivors go to Manhattan, and then Jason takes Manhattan and kills people, and then there's
He takes a few alleyways.
It takes a little bit of Manhattan, and then there's a very weird ending.
A very small portion that I don't think New York would miss very much.
Yeah, I think New York will survive without what Jason takes.
I know there's that comic book you bought like one issue of that's like what
a pitch of like actual Jason actually taking Manhattan,
which is pretty good. I read the first issue. That was
I
really
need
funny.
to remember what that series is, but it's like, but yeah, this is an interesting one because all the stuff on the boat is good. Like the stuff on the boat is like it's got some.
There are so many subplots with these characters. Like most of these movies don't really do subplots with the characters.
This
They're all
movie
just there.
overcompensates by doing the subplots of like 6 different movies,
Like
at once. There's a romance subplot. There's a subplot about punks, which I'm very disappointed because the punks die early.
The romance.
Why do they kill the punks off early always?
There's also the romance. The
There's
boyfriend
the romance.
character.
There's the aquaphobia subplot. There's
the
Chekhov. There's Chekhov's pen once owned by Stephen King.
There's the captain and his son, who's also the love
There's
interest.
the captain's son.
There's the biology project.
There's a biology project that's just like a student trying to sleep with the teacher in order to get a good grade. There's...
I feel like I don't know.
There's so much It's like the other movies were like lax on character, and it's like we're gonna have so much character. Watch me. We're gonna do so much. But like at the points where it isn't just complete overload, there's actually some like more believable character writing. Like the characters figure out way earlier in this than they do in any other Friday movie that Jason's after them, and they actively respond proactively. There's like a lot of drama in this that comes about. Okay, how do we deal with Jason? Like when the teacher straight up just doesn't want to admit it's Jason, even though it clearly is. Like, and they do get some good stuff out of that.
Which is definitely like something in all these movies is always like they don't realize Jason is real or a threat until the last act. And
it's like better paced because it moves a little quicker.
And I also
the cast figures out what's going on a lot earlier and responds a lot faster.
And also this movie has a better Quinn analogy or allegory or character. With Wayne.
I like Wayne.
Who just wants to go to film school.
Wayne's just like
and doesn't realize the true love of his life is right in front of him.
Wayne is
who also died first.
Because basically, Wayne is like this kid who's close with JJ, who's like a rock musician who's just like he films all her videos, and like Wayne's got a crush on another girl, and like JJ loves him, but she can't bring herself to admit it. Jason kills her pretty quickly, unfortunately. Why do they always kill the punks first? But, like, at the end of it, like, Wayne has this really intense scene where he just loses his glasses, like, below the boat, and has to use his camcorder to see by putting it up to his eye. By changing the focus. And, like,
if
using
that's
the zoom.
how it works, I don't know, but it's
and
cool.
using this, because it's like the LCD picture on it, right?
I don't wear glasses. I don't know how they work.
It's like you look into the LCD picture and like you can see it without the glasses. I usually look into the like viewfinder without the glasses, and that works. But Jason like kills him and he's bleeding out. And there's actually this one really good moment of characterization where like he's dying and he just sees JJ's body, and like as he's dying, he just without any words, it just hits her that, oh god, she actually did love me.
And then he gets thrown into a bunch
and he reaches out for her, and then Jason ruins the fucking mood by hurling him into a circuit breaker.
And then he catches on fire, and it's awesome.
Because Jason Voorhees is the ultimate buzzkill.
Honestly, like, there's so many subplots, and that's a great subplot. This has first Asian American character in the franchise.
Which is good. Good representation.
You know, always gotta love the representation.
She gets
this one,
killed
the
pretty
dog
quickly.
survives.
The dog lives!
Definitively.
There's a dog, and the dog lives!
Like, in part 2, I have no idea, but this one, definitively, it survives. His name's
The dog-
Toby, I
Yeah,
think?
the dog definitely lives. But yeah, there's the stuff in the boat, and the
There's
stuff in the boat...
one good, like, one-take kill also.
There's a good one-take kill where it's, like, filmed from outside, like, the bridge. And, like, it's slowly pushing it as Jason just sneaks up on the guy on the bridge, and in one broken shot, just stabs him through the chest with, like, a spear. And also, what works about it is it's got some really good lighting. There's a lot of good use of colored lighting in the boat sections of this film. Like, there's some moments where it's, like, bright colored lighting that's almost like Dario Argento or early Mario Bava style lighting.
We should also mention that this is the first one without Harry Manfredini.
Yeah, this is one of the only ones without Harry Manfredini. He's gonna come back for the next two.
I didn't feel like it didn't feel like too jarring, the soundtrack compared to.
But it's not as memorable.
I actually like the soundtrack a fair amount.
It's fine. I don't think it's as memorable as the Manfredini scores.
I mean, yeah, but maybe that's just because.
But yeah, I do like the sections on the boat. They've got like some suspense. They're written a little differently and a little more proactively.
They try to fight back against Jason.
They actually do try to fight back against Jason, which is interesting. Like, and then they escape the boat, and then they make it to Manhattan, and the movie fucking falls apart.
I don't think it falls apart. It just gets like so bad.
It turns into like one of the most hilariously bad Friday movies.
Like that.
It turned from one of the best Friday movies into one of the worst.
The main character gets shot up with heroin
after almost being raped.
But then Jason saves her.
Okay, no. The first thing that happens in Manhattan is they're immediately mugged by multi-ethnic street gangs.
Oh, we should also mention there's only 37...
Who then kidnap Rennie, and try to drug her full of heroin so they can rape her. Fuck off, movie.
But this
bad. But then Jason saves her for some reason.
Because he doesn't like sex.
Yeah, Jason doesn't like... Okay, yeah.
God.
Jesus Christ, yeah. That's not fun. That's not fun.
It's not a good scene.
It's not a good scene. It's just... It has no need to fucking be there. Like, it's just there so they can get more kills in. And this is also where the tone of the movie goes off the fucking rails.
Oh, just so you know, in this 100-minute movie, we have about 37 minutes, including credits, left. And now he just got to Manhattan, and most of this stuff in Manhattan is in the alleyways.
It's
and
mostly,
the sewers.
And it's also mostly useless. And it's except for when it's insane, like with your favorite kill.
Okay, my favorite kill of the series is in this movie. We got my guy. He's a boxer, and he's on the roof with Jason, and he spends the next 3 minutes trying to box Jason, and Jason's just taking all these.
Jason doesn't even recognize it. It's like Jason's just staring down at him, like, "What the hell are you doing,
he's like,
man?"
Knocking Jason back. He's trying to knock him off of the edge. And then he just gets so tired after 3 minutes.
And he's just
begging. Give me your best shot. And then
Jason punches him so hard his head flies off.
And it is awesome.
And it rolls down into a dumpster.
That is, if I were to die in a Friday movie, that's how I would have wanted to die.
It's
is so cool.
So after like deaths that have been fairly realistic with like decently executed for the first part of the movie, it just suddenly turns completely cartoonish. And somehow
I love that Jason let this guy punch him for 3 minutes. Like, Jason was like, okay, keep going.
And it's not like it goes back to seriousness after this. The next kill is Jason dumping somebody into a barrel of toxic waste.
And, oh man, I wish they did more
like
with
Toxic Avenger style.
And then we get...
Because, you know, the New York sewer... Not New York sewers. Oh, actually, also in the New York sewers. But, you know, the streets of New York are just filled with barrels of nuclear waste.
Then we get Times Square briefly, where Jason has, like, a comedic moment. He's got like 2 comedic moments in this scene.
He gets a couple moments where he shows more personality.
He sees like the
billboard
of the mask.
He sees some billboard of like mask, and he just does the Michael Myers head tilt.
Yeah.
He just straight up does the Michael Myers head tilt. And then like later on when he's in Times Square, a bunch of like street punks come up to him and they're like, hey, they're trying to hassle him, and then Jason just lifts up the mask and they run away.
And I also love that Jason in this movie. Right after that, the stunt double for Jason. Also, the guy who plays Jason.
The man who's going to play Jason in Freddy vs. Jason gets thrown
into a window
by Jason.
but
so this is the first movie where we can
really,
actually say that it has Jason versus Jason.
We do get a really cool shot though after that of like the Enter the Dragon shot of Jason walking through the cafe
and like
the
shot in
fractured
broken mirrors. There's even when this goes to hell in the second half, there's still some striking visual moments.
And then after that, they just like go to the sewers. That's all you see.
They go to the sewers,
apparently,
apparently every day flood with nuclear waste.
Like, why is there so much toxic waste in New York? This was also a thing in Toxic Avengers, so I don't know.
Oh no, Toxic Avenger takes place outside New York.
But they mentioned at the beginning, like
New York,
like New York. But yeah, then we get Jason gets.
So clearly, this is in the same universe as the Toxic Avenger, is what you were saying.
Maybe. All I know is that Jason then gets flooded with toxic waste, and he
regresses back into a baby.
But not before we see him without the mask, which is, I would argue, is the worst looking Jason we've had
He
yet.
just looks like a mannequin. He looks like a bad Muppet.
And there's like a deleted scene where that was called Jason Mouthwash Kid Jason. Sorry, sneezed. And it's just like they built a giant Jason head, and it had Kid Jason in there going, "Help me, help me," and it made no sense. The weirdest deleted scene.
And then Jason gets hit so hard by nuclear waste he turns back into a baby.
That had to be like the heroine talking for her, like, 'cause she's.
That has to be a hallucination.
But then they leave, they find the dog again, and there are 2 survivors and a dog survivor, and I thoroughly enjoy this dumb
fun.
movie.
It's not a particularly good film. There's about half of a good movie in it, and there's about half of a really terrible but fun movie in it.
Either way, I could definitely see myself putting this on at any time. I would definitely recommend this to people who like So Bad It's Good. And also, to some degree,
this is like the best. This and 3 are like your chances if you just want a Friday the 13th film to probably like giggle at.
This one has more fun than Part 3.
Yeah, I think Part 3 is still pretty fun though.
Part 3, all of them are fun except for like 2 of them, but we will get to those because now.
So now we're on to the 9th film in this franchise, which is where this kind of turns hands over to New Line Cinemas from Paramount, who've been producing the last Friday films. And I should probably mention at this point that in a lot of like the big slasher franchises, at least the big 3, there's always one installment that is really weird in a sense that it breaks from the rules of the franchise, that it does something very different in terms of tone and approach and the story it's telling, and tries something very out of the box. And this is that one. And out of these 3 weird installments, between this film, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, and
Nightmare 2?
A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 Freddy's Revenge,
or even New Nightmare,
this is the one people like the least. This is the one people genuinely seem to outright hate. This is the Jason
one that
Goes to Hell, the final Friday. And this is my nuclear level Friday the 13th hot take. I like Jason Goes to Hell. Jason Goes to Hell is one of my favorite Friday films.
I will say,
I like this one.
I'll say,
I like this one.
I don't know if people hate this as much as Part 3. It just hasn't had the resurgence that Halloween 3 has had, or Nightmare 2.
And I don't think it's comparable to those films. It's definitely not comparable to Halloween 3. We'll discuss Halloween 3. We'll get a chance to talk about how good Halloween 3 is and how unfair it is that the studio completely screwed John Carpenter and Tommy Lee Wallace over on that one, but... yeah, that one's good, but this one is Jason Goes to Hell, the Final Friday. It's 1993, directed by Adam Marcus. And we'll get into it, but I actually really like this one. This one is the Weird Friday movie, and I think this one's really fun.
I agree completely. Like, they definitely... if I were, like, really into the lore, like, this was part of my identity, like some weirdo, then sure, I would be a little upset, because they really take liberties with the lore and the rules of the franchise.
I don't care.
I don't care either.
It's cool. I like what they do with this, because, again, it's them leaning into, like, inexplicable supernatural Jason. And I think, honestly, to explain why this film is kind of so widely hated amongst the fan base of Friday the 13th, and why I defend it, I think we need to talk about what this film is about. So we get at the start of the film our very classic Friday opening, where we have like a young woman alone in the woods, about to shower naked, Jason shows up, stalks her. The woman runs into a clearing, gestures around the clearing, and then suddenly spotlights go on and a SWAT team shows up and guns Jason down before killing him with a bomb dropped from a helicopter.
And, like, so...
It's over the top and silly as hell, but it's kind of a fun flip on the usual Friday the 13th formula, where it takes, like, the whole, like, powerless final girl running from Jason, and then just flips it as, like, oh no, this is a government sting operation to draw Jason Voorhees, who has just murdered hundreds of people at this point, out of hiding and kill him.
Like, he's
once
no longer
and for
a
all.
myth, he's a fact.
He is a fact. The government knows about him, and they are just killing him.
And
And he blows up. He is completely exploded at the start of this movie.
And this connects to Part 8 somehow. I think you have to read a comic to understand how we got from Manhattan, from being acid killed, to this. You only see Jason at the beginning and the end of this movie, but he looks interesting. His skin has grown over his mask at this point.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
It's a very unnerving Jason design. It's like his mask has literally become part of his body. It's more Cronenbergian than the Friday movie that's going to actually have Cronenberg in it.
And it's fun. And Jason grunts for some reason in this movie, which is novel. But how I remember this movie is when I first saw this, I remember feeling, at least during the police station scene, this feels like Terminator. And this feels definitely like a B-grade Terminator film to me.
Yeah.
Of Jason just trying to hunt down these specific people, these other Voorhees.
I think we should explain what the real premise of this is. So Jason is destroyed in the opening scene, but his heart survives. And then there's there's an autopsy scene where this coroner is just sort of cutting it through the remains of Jason's body. He finds the heart. It reanimates in his hand. And then for inexplicable reasons, he is just drawn to eat it.
And it's like made of gelatin.
And it's gelatin, and it's disgusting, and he's digging into it, and he's just tearing it apart with his flesh. And that is how Jason possesses him. Jason doesn't need a body in this movie. In fact, he is just hopping from mortal shell to mortal shell, using whoever he can to kill people. And he is specifically going after his long-lost sister and her child to destroy the Voorhees bloodline once and for all.
Well, this is also the first time we actually learn about Jason's dad. He was going to be in part 6, but we learned Elias Voorhees. He's not in it, but we learned about him. And we learned Jason has a sister, which is weird, because kind of undermines Pamela's struggle. But,
yeah.
This movie is basically just...
It completely upends the rules of the Friday franchise.
It stars the lead actor from the Friday the 13th TV show, which has nothing to do with the franchise. But he plays the main character. And you can tell it's immediately a lot weirder, because we have maybe the longest title sequence in Friday history. This is reaching, again with the references to this film, which is a sign that we should cover Carpenter's Apocalypse trilogy at some point. Yeah.
This is an intro that, in terms of length, is comparable, and how much it's stretched out is comparable to John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness. In that it is a very long title sequence. The title sequence lasts like 10 minutes.
Are you talking about the pre?
There's the pre-title sequence, and then the title sequence itself still keeps going along as they keep cutting to the autopsy.
Oh, right, yeah.
It's very Prince of Darkness.
This
also brings back a lot of the stuff I appreciate from 6. This brings back a lot of the weird dark comedy. This brings back a lot of like the actual like kind of digging into like the society of Crystal Lake and like how Crystal Lake is kind of adapted to Jason.
The Jason burgers.
There's an amazing joke in this where it just cuts to like a diner in Crystal Lake and they're just like, Jason is dead sale, half off burgers.
And the burgers are shaped like hockey masks, and it's great. And I like the Creighton Duke.
Creighton Duke!
The greatest
the mad bounty hunter who is just like who for some reason knows that Jason is a supernatural entity. and also
Because-
knows exactly how to kill him.
And takes payment in broken fingers.
He takes payment for information by breaking a man's fingers one by one and giving him a piece of information for each finger. He is a 14-year-old's idea of what a badass is, and he's awesome.
He helps the guy from Friday the 13th, the show, and Jason's sister.
It's also cool because it's not teenage Friday protagonists. It's like these are working adults who have like jobs. They're like very different from your usual Friday cast of teens. Like, and even the cannon fodder are all different. These are all just like the people of Crystal Lake. These are like they own businesses. They're married. Like, these are the people who have kind of been off limits in other Friday movies, and now Jason's coming for them.
The effects, we saw the unrated cut.
The effects are impressive. The effects are not done by Tom Savini, but they are done by like more veterans of practical effects, who are Robert Kurtzman, Greg Nicotero, and Howard Berger of K&B Effects Group. And K&B Effects Group are a big deal. They do a lot of major modern practical effects. You'll know their work from The Walking Dead. Robert Kurtz, they did a lot of work on something like From Dusk Till Dawn, to the point where Robert Kurtzman co-wrote that movie with Tarantino. Like, they are a big deal in the industry, and they do some fine work here.
There's a great...
It's grisly.
There's a great, like, bisection scene where...
Yeah.
There's, like, Hellraiser in this
There's
movie.
the body melting, which is the...
There's, like, Society and
actually
Hellraiser.
terrifying. There's a scene where, like, Jason unpossesses a guy, and we see what happens after it, which is that his body just completely melts from the inside out until he's just this, like, skeleton held up by this, like, desiccated muscle trying to keep itself alive before it dies. It's horrifying.
Oh, and we should really quickly...
It's also pretty well made, too. There's a lot of really good moments. There's a great split diopter shot in this movie, which is to say, it's a split diopter shot. I'm always going to love those. But there's a great split diopter shot near the end of the movie where someone's on the phone and the background is just Jason killing everybody.
I love the joke where Jason knows how to shave. He shaves a guy because he wants his body to be
He doesn't want a beard on his body. It's like that... Again, it's why I like it. It's like that sort of part 4 weird dark comedy seeping back in.
Jason already had a beard in part 2. He didn't like it. He moved on.
He shaved.
And I love that the comedy in this is really funny. Also,
it's the closest to part. It's the closest the series is to like the tone and style of part 6.
I think we should quickly explain that the goal of the main characters is Jason wants to kill the
female
love
lead.
interest, the female lead, because
she is his secret sister,
and she can kill him.
Only the rules at this moment are only a Voorhees can kill another Voorhees, and they have to do it with a specific magical dagger. It's kind of a little... That's one of my issues with the movie, like the specificity of, like, this is the specific way you have to kill him kind of contrasts with, like, the Jason as weird, inexplicable supernatural entity thing in a way that I'm not huge on in horror. I kind of like... I'm good sometimes with just letting things be unexplained.
And also... But the other thing is that he wants to rebirth himself.
He wants to rebirth
do that
himself
through a Voorhees.
Yeah.
So he kills his sister, and he's going after his niece, I guess, because it's Halloween. The Necronomicon's in there. And
the Necronomicon is in there.
It's implied that Jason might be a Deadite or something like that.
So we need to mention the ending of this movie, which is that Jason does go to hell. He gets dragged to hell by giant hands that come out of the ground after he's stabbed with the magical dagger. But then the final shot of the movie, we have like a dog just comes up, sniffs like Jason's mask in the dirt, and leaves. And then suddenly, in a moment that was probably for horror nerds the equivalent of like Nick Fury showing up and talking about the Avengers Initiative, Freddy Krueger claws shit out of and then grab the mask and drag it away with Freddy laughing. And then the movie just casually admits, next movie, Freddy vs. Jason. It's happening. We will not cover... I'm just going to say in advance, we're not going to cover Freddy vs. Jason right now. We will not be covering it with Nightmare on Elm Street. Trust me. Trust me on this. We've got something truly spectacular planned for when we cover Freddy vs. Jason. But we're not going to say what it is, but you'll know when it's time.
It took 10 years until we finally got the payoff of that final scene.
But then again, it's also not the only franchise this crosses over with, because the Necronomicon from Evil Dead is in this. Which means that you brought up the possibility that Jason might be a Deadite.
Right.
I don't think he is. Like, Jason's not a Deadite. Deadites, are more, like, lively. They have more of, like, a weird sense of humor. They're kind of, it's the rule of, like, 6. They're kind of more of the joke, but they're also scary, whereas Jason is, like, less of the joke.
So what do you think he is? Was it Necronomicon?
He's
just
some
there,
other, maybe he's some other kind of demon. He's maybe not specifically a Deadite.
Well, he's a worm demon, definitely.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah, we don't know. But, that's not even the only... Those aren't even the only ones this crossover. Because this also crosses over with Creepshow.
Right.
There's a crate in the basement of, like, the house where the film ends, like, the old Voorhees house. And the crate is... If you've seen the movie The Creepshow and know the segment of it called The Crate, that is literally The Crate.
The crepe.
The Crate. It's just in the same universe as Creepshow and Evil Dead. And what the hell? Why are they doing shared universe stuff with this?
They did this before it was cool. Well, I guess the first people to do that was probably like
Universal Monsters. Universal Monsters are the first cinematic universe. The best cinematic universe.
But, yeah, and there are a lot of great scenes of Jason just rampaging through different bodies.
It's intense. It's like and this is why I like it. It's the one that's like, it goes all in on like a weirder take on the premise. It tries something really different. It's like a very different, it's so different of an approach from a Friday film that I just really like it. And it's pretty well executed. I don't think this is a bad movie.
And I agree that it's probably it's often scarier when the killer is just killing for no reason. But I do like this change where it's like Terminator. He has a goal. He knows who he wants to get to.
It's
and he
totally
just
Terminator.
Makes a beeline for them.
It's totally more supernatural Terminator, but
it's like not as good as Terminator, obviously. But
I still like it.
I think it's super fun. Would you recommend this?
I actually would. I really like this one. This is genuinely one of my favorites of the franchise, and I think that the rest of the fan base is wrong. Like, you are all wrong. This is a good movie. Give it time. You'll all come around on this. You'll come around on this the same way you came around on Halloween 3, the same way you came around on Nightmare on Elm Street 2, so help me God.
Honestly, like, I because so many people hate this movie, I don't know if I could recommend it without them hating me. But for people me,
I don't care what people say about this movie. This is a good Friday.
For people like
me, this is
me,
a good Friday movie. It's fun. I like it.
Yeah, I enjoy it too. And that leads us to
Oh God, no!
Now our real question is, what's better? Which is worse, Jason X or Leprechaun in Space? I think this is worse. Leprechaun in Space had giant leprechaun and it had a little more.
Leprechaun in Space had a little more ingenuity. I cannot believe I'm saying this about Leprechaun in Space, but unfortunately, it has to compare to Jason X, the one where Jason goes to space.
So this movie starts with Jason is alive again. He's out of hell. I think I remember it's explained in Freddy vs. Jason that Freddy got him out of hell, but I could be wrong. But in this movie, he's out, and he looks not good. It's just Kane Hodder without a mask. With a mask.
You don't even see his eyes.
Yeah, you see his eyes. He just looks like Kane Hodder. Kane Hodder, he's a cool guy, but he does not look like Jason anymore. He does not look like a zombie. He's just a guy, like, especially compared to 9, where they made him like a whole, like, thing, like with the skin growing over the mask.
And now he's just a normal person again.
And David Cronenberg
Cronenberg shows up! And this isn't even the only time he's connected with Friday, because then he does an episode of the TV series before this.
Which is a better episode than this is a movie.
Yeah, because it's David Cronenberg. Now, for those of you who don't know, David Cronenberg, if you just watch David Cronenberg's movies. We'll talk about him eventually. We'll have to do an episode on the fly, but David Cronenberg is one of the best horror directors of the 70s and 80s. This is a guy who is so important as a horror filmmaker that his name is synonymous with a specific type of horror. You cannot talk about the idea of body horror without talking about Cronenberg. And he is in this movie for some goddamn reason.
And he only did it so...
He only did it... He agreed... Because they shot this in Canada. And David Cronenberg is a Canadian filmmaker. And he agreed to sort of help out by, like, recommending some production team. But on one condition. He wanted to be killed off in this. So he plays a evil government official who's keeping Jason at this cryogenic freezing plant in Crystal Lake.
Because that's a research facility for...
Which is there now in the year 2008. and are basically like, they try to put him in. So our protagonist, Rowan, who is a government official, tries to put him in cryogenic freeze. Cronenberg shows up, like, thinking, okay, Jason can just heal wounds, we need to just investigate this. Suddenly, this got really X-Men again.
Basically,
This is just Weapon X from X-Men. Why does this series keep turning into X-Men?
long story short, in 2 sentences, Jason and
get-
the main character
get frozen.
wake up in space, and
In
Jason kills a bunch of people.
24:45.
And then Jason kills a bunch of people, and that's it.
Yeah.
The
But
ol-
then it takes protagonists wake up. It's 24:45. Earth is a polluted hell. Earth is a climate change racked polluted hell, which I don't want to think about that right now. That's a little too
soon,
close
too
to
close.
home. So they basically bring Jason on board a spaceship. They revive him because we have a shameless analog to Burke from Aliens who wants to revive him so they can sell him out as an assassin or something.
And Jason wakes
Look,
up.
he's just like the Wayland Yutani knockoff. He wants money.
And Jason wakes up because there's sex in another room. Something I do kind of enjoy about this movie is there is unintentional world building that I think is really funny, such as they're moving Jason at the beginning to the Scranton facility. So
Which
the
means
office,
we missed out on the episode of The Office where it's just like Jason kills everybody.
And
We missed out on the Office Friday the 13th crossover for this.
The best unintentional world building, or I guess it was intentional, was that apparently we only have
We
three
have
more years.
We have 3 more years left of hockey. Hockey's going to be outlawed in 2024, everybody. Enjoy it while it lasts.
All the characters are. You got cliche cowboy
The characters don't
pilot.
know what bikes are.
Yeah, it's weird saying they're like.
Here's
cliche-
the thing. This isn't a Friday the 13th movie. This is a shitty Alien knockoff. And this is the first chance I've had to discuss this. We're going to get into this a lot more in future episodes. Alien is my favorite horror movie ever made. It is my favorite movie ever made. Like, and I am somebody who still enjoys Alien knockoffs. I think they can be very fun and very silly.
Oh, I love them.
I enjoy Alien knockoffs. There are good Alien knockoffs out there, like Leviathan from the 80s. It's a great Alien knockoff that's just basically Alien at the bottom of the ocean, but it's great. This is one of the shittiest Alien knockoffs I've ever seen.
It's
this
so
is
cheap.
so bad.
The thing is, this could almost theoretically work as a short in the 80s or 90s, but something about being
This
in the
could have worked.
2000s
It could have worked if
characters-
it was like in 80s or 90s and had zero self-awareness. Because the thing is,
This is
this
like a
tries
Joss
to be.
Whedon script.
This is like a Joss Whedon script, and Joss Whedon writing Alien, and Joss Whedon writing style plus the actual Alien franchise gave us a movie that, to just spoil my opinion for when we do the Alien episode, is garbage. Like, absolutely garbage. One of the worst sequels I've ever seen.
There's a
What
lot-
made you think it was gonna go well by putting Joss Whedon tone on an Alien knockoff? It was gonna go even worse.
I'm all for a little self-awareness, but there were just a few too many, check please moments. Like, that happened.
This is a painfully unfunny movie. Every time this movie tries to be funny, it just
Alright.
face
Whenever
plants.
I did giggle a few times and I felt so sick. There was one part when they have that hologram he's in, and there's those two girls.
I'll give them
hugging-
that. That was a decent joke. That's the only
It's just
decent
because of
joke in the
Jason
movie.
beating them. Where
The joke where they put Jason on the holodeck and conjure up 80s Crystal Lake is just... that's the only good
It's
joke.
not like haha funny. It's like it's like exhale through the nose kind of funny.
But yeah, this is a very... It's not funny. It's also such a shitty Alien knockoff.
I mean, this was written by people who know a lot of sci-fi and classic. There's the Solaris.
There's references to Solaris in
Waylander,
this.
the
There's
BFG,
references to Alien. There's
Star Wars.
There's a BFG in this. It's just like, why are you putting Doom references in this?
2001:
there's-
Space Odyssey
There's
outfits.
Beowulf references in this. The ship is called the Grendel, which is the most... Nostromo symbolized something. We need a ship name that's kind of symbolic. Let's name it after a monster. Oh god.
And then I thought Uber Jason was in this more, because Jason gets killed pretty easily when they arm the robot.
They armed the sex bot.
They arm the sex bot, she destroys Jason, they
arm the sex bot, and she shows up in leather and does flips at him and then destroys him in basically the Black Knight scene where she just cuts all his limbs off.
What year was this movie? Like, when this came out?
Don't know, and I don't want to know.
Was this after, this was in 2001 after, and,
this was after Alien Resurrection.
But this scene...
You think I'm mad now? Wait until we get to Alien Resurrection.
They mentioned Jason almost killed 200 people up until this point. I don't know if that's the right number, but that's what they say. And then Jason accidentally blows up 20,000
Okay, so Jason kills the pilot of the ship as they're approaching this space station.
Solaris,
and then the station, and then the ship just, without a pilot, plows through the station, and the station explodes. And the writer has confirmed that the death toll of this is around 20,000 people. Jason is not just a killer at this point. Jason is damn near committing genocide at this point.
And also,
Jason is reaching dictator levels of body count now.
This movie's sense of humor. This is another in-space movie with a lot of cross-dressing jokes.
It thinks that men in women's clothing are funny. It's a lot of cross-dressing and transgender jokes, just like Leprechaun.
My favorite.
It's Leprechaun in space, but without Brian Trenchard Smith. I hate
Leprechaun
this movie.
in space is terrible. Jason X is worse, in my opinion.
It's bad because it's like even more of a straight up alien.
It has
knockoff.
one character I like, who was the guy who intercepted Jason at the very end and drove him to Earth, like the badass.
And then the effects on that are so terrible. Actually, the effects on this overall are terrible. Because this is the point where they really give up on practical and just go all in on CGI, and it looks so bad.
The movie ends with Jason being brought back to Earth 2. By
being thrown through an atmosphere, and it looks so bad. It's like Spy Kids caliber CGI.
This movie is...
Then I mean Spy Kids 3 CGI.
This is the only movie in the franchise that I would say, I hate to use the word hate it.
I do not like this movie.
I don't like it, though.
It's just absolutely, it's a shitty Alien knockoff with a truly atrocious sense of humor. Like, it just isn't, it's not funny, it's not scary, it just thinks, like, random sex jokes and, like, sub-Joss Whedon level quips.
It's an MTV version of Jason.
Yeah, it's, like, it's
100%,
like, 2000s horror, like, pre-Saw. It's pre-Saw 2000s horror, and I don't say that as a nice thing.
Yeah, I don't...
There are probably some charming works of that, but this is not charming.
I'm gonna guess you don't recommend it.
I don't even have much to say about this. It's just bad. It's just like...
It does have probably the third or fourth or fifth best kill, which is the liquid nitrogen kill.
That's the only good one.
Even though Mythbusters disproved it, I still think it's a pretty cool one.
It's the only good thing. It's the only salvageable part of this movie. I don't even have much to say on it. I just don't want to talk about Jason X.
Yeah, I remember, like, I saw this a few years ago, and I hated it, and then I knew we were coming back to it, and I was just gonna, like, I was waiting for you to say, actually, Max, this is kind of fun. I like this. This is so quirky.
Max, I'm not that much of a contrarian. I know bad when I see it. And, like, doing Alien badly is, like...
a sin.
Original sin for me. It is, like... That is, like 10 Commandments level sin for me. It's, like... And this is one of the worst Alien ripoffs I've ever seen.
If it's worse than Leprechaun 4, that's something. And honestly, I think
that's astonishing. It might genuinely be the worst Alien knockoff I've ever seen. Except for Alien Resurrection. I don't even want to count that as actually part of... I mean, modern stuff doesn't even really count it as part of the franchise. I don't even want to touch that thing. We'll get to Alien Resurrection eventually, and you will hear what happens when I am angry at a movie.
Anyway, so we both don't recommend it. Next, we're not going to analyze it, but next, after this came Freddy vs. Jason, which was the
We're not going to talk about
crossover.
that. We're not going to talk about that.
We're going to save that for...
We're going to talk about that, and, like, you know, maybe someday we might just do a crossover episode, like talking about crossovers, but that's never going to happen. Just like, just like Freddy vs. Jason was never going to happen, and so they did, the New Blood instead. That's never gonna happen. It's going to happen.
I do think this movie, anyway, is like 5% more of a nightmare movie than a Jason movie.
It's way more Freddy than it is
Not
Jason.
way more, but it's a bit more.
It's significantly more, at least.
Freddy's the bad guy.
Jason's kind of the hero.
We're not going to analyze it, but I would say I don't recommend it.
It's
but I
fun,
don't
it's not good. It's fun, but it's not good.
I think it's something you put on if it's raining outside.
Yeah, and with that said, we're going to save our thoughts for when we inevitably talk about it on the episode that will come eventually.
Next we have
our final real Friday movie.
Real one, yeah.
Because currently we don't know if we're going to get any more. We'll get into that a little later. But this is our final fully complete and released official Friday movie. And it is Friday the 13th. The remake. Directed by Marcus Nispel. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that name right. Sorry if you're listening, Marcus.
This movie is shot and directed by the Texas Chainsaw Remake guys.
This is sort of our first encounter with a group that's going to be sort of popping up a bunch on this as we deal with like big name franchises.
Platinum Dunes.
And that's Platinum Dunes. This is Michael Bay's production company. And in the 2000s and early 2010s, they released a series of like modernized, increasingly edgy horror remakes. We're gonna talk about this one. We'll eventually talk about like the remakes of
Nightmare on Texas Chainsaw.
Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Was Prom Night a?
I don't think Prom Night was them. I can't remember
Quiet
what
Place.
Quiet Place is their original work.
Right.
But this is our first real remake of theirs. And
I used to when I first saw this when I was younger. I hated it. I only saw the original cut. Then I saw the director's cut, and every time I rewatch it, I hate it a bit less because I pick up...
I still don't like it, but there's stuff I like about it.
I pick up on some of like the nods to the film that I didn't pick up on before, such as ending on a jump scare, Sackhead Jason, just how they go all out on the cliche characters and the Reaganomic don't do drugs and sex kid. This is what your kids might be doing, and they might get murdered stuff.
But I think we need to talk about I think we need to start by talking about the best part of this movie, which is the opening 20
Derek
minutes.
Mears, opening 20 minutes are actually
okay. So the
fantastic.
Opening 20 minutes open with like
it's a speed run.
It's a speed run. The opening 20 minutes of this film end in one of my favorite little things a movie can do, which is a delayed title card. Like dropping your title like more than like 15 minutes into a film. That's a sign that this is okay. That's fun. I always enjoy when they do that. And this starts off with basically a 20-minute prologue that is the filmmakers speedrunning the Friday the 13th franchise. We start at the end of the first movie, Pamela Voorhees getting beheaded, and then like the next 15 minutes after that are just like Jason's first real killing, are like one of Jason's first.
I don't know if they're his first.
I don't know, but it's like a Jason killing spree, and it basically is like a 15-minute long version of a regular Friday the 13th movie. It's just like teenagers go out to the woods, they camp around, and Jason kills them, and it's just like complete, and it just does a whole movie in itself in the first 20 minutes, and it is better than the rest of the movie. It is a better Friday the 13th movie than the rest of this Friday the 13th movie.
This is explicitly the first time it's an actual rebooting the continuity after part one, because everything else is like
all in the same continuity.
Yeah, technically. And this is the first one that says everything but part one is not meaning Alice is probably still alive in this universe, maybe, which I like because I liked her. But
so yeah, we got our teens. They go out to the woods.
They're looking for
sex.
pot.
They're looking for pot. They find wild marijuana growing in Crystal Lake, which I don't even know how marijuana works. But they also really blatantly want to set that scene in the 80s, but can't because they have like Sister Christian playing.
Oh yeah. And also, this opening sequence has the most painful looking kill of
this whole movie. The violence in this film is like the most stretched out and sadistic violence in all the variety. It's not like the most gory, it's not like the most over the top, it's just the way the film lingers on it so much.
Jason,
it's like
played
it holds on it and it stretches it out. I'm almost reminded of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which makes sense because the director of this also remade the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And this is literally shot by the cinematographer of the original Texas Chainsaw, Daniel Pearl. So it kind of makes sense that it's like that.
And I agree.
And I like that. I like the intensity of it, like how horrifying it is, like the tone of it. And then the characters open their mouths and never shut up.
Well, like the characters are like, they're bad in the opening, but they're not too intrusive because they go pretty quickly. But like, oh man, I'm telling you though, that the sleeping bag sequence in the opening is terrifying to me, where they just tie someone up in a sleeping bag and hang them over a campfire, is just so traumatic. But yeah, whereas part 5, they kind of went with Rob Zombie white trash characters, this was more of 90210 trash characters.
But even more obnoxious. They're so obnoxious in this. I hate these characters so much. You described the first Friday the 13th as a hangout film, right?
Right.
This is a hangout film where I don't want to hang out with any of these people. This is like a hangout with all of your shittiest friends.
Oh,
I hate all these people so much.
Do you hate Chewie also?
Okay, Chewie's fine.
Chewie's just a weirdo.
fine. He's just like, he's fine. He's doing his own thing. Everybody else is so fucking obnoxious.
This movie is... Everyone here has a potty mouth. There are so many
this is the
sex jokes.
sleaziest Friday the 13th.
Oh, yeah.
This is the one with, like, the most pointless nudity. This is the one with the most, like, sex equals death stuff. This is, like, absolutely downright... probably the most exploitative Friday the 13th
And this
film.
is not even the one from the porn director, which is
Yeah,
something.
shockingly.
I will say, I do like...
But it's, like, so exaggerated, too. It's, like, the violence is so stretched out, and the characters are so absurdly one-dimensional, and, like, all we think about sex... I described this when we were watching it as, like, it's a cartoon of a cartoon.
I did like that they kind of redid the Part 4 bounty hunter character with Clay. You remember, he's looking for his sister.
Yeah, but he's
And
boring.
He's pretty boring, but at least
don't like him.
At least he's not Trent or anyone else.
I remember describing this as... I remember, like, thinking about this. It's like, okay, it's got a great opening 20 minutes, and then just goes to shit with, like, these 90210 characters, terrible dialogue, like, bad pacing, and I realized, holy shit, this is Children of the Corn 5 in verse. It starts out with the really good 20 minutes, and then it completely falls apart.
The dialogue, I think, to some degree, gets pretty funny. Like,
The dialogue is some of the worst dialogue I've ever heard in a slasher movie.
I was making up my own dialogue when they're like, Trent was just being a jerk because Clay was like asking the guy at the gas station if he could put up signs of his missing sister, and Trent was like bored, and he said something mean. He's like, "Keep moving, bro," and then Clay said, "All right, I'll keep moving, but I'm not your bro." And then I just said, "I'm not your bro, guy. I'm not your guy friend. I'm not your friend, buddy."
And that could have been dialogue in the film. Can we also talk about the fact that all the white men in this film look fucking identical?
Oh, yeah.
Every white man in this film looks like each other.
Clay, Trent, and the guy on the boat have the same haircut, look exactly alike, same body type. The girls also look alike. The only way I was able to tell the secondary main girl that wasn't the sister apart was because she had slightly darker hair.
Yeah.
That's why I liked...
I can't tell these characters apart because they all look identical. Because most of them look like identical, and the ones who look identical all have the same personality, which is that they're all aggressively horny and shitty. This has some of the weirdest sex shit in any Friday film.
And also the funniest line in any sex scene of all time.
Yeah, oh God.
You've got perfect nipple placement, baby.
That's somehow not even the weirdest part, where you also get the guy who get like the hillbilly who licks his centerfold and then fucks a mannequin.
Trent is a character, is like the secondary villain, and he's a love-to-hate-him guy, but he's just a little too present and annoying. And even though his death is satisfying, it could have been more.
Yeah.
Just because he's so unlikable.
Max, can we talk about you predicting the future?
Yeah.
Can we talk about your psychic breakdown?
You are talking about the Tick Tick Boom song?
Yes. So I note during this movie, because this has a lot of really shitty and generic 2000s rock songs.
It's got a lot of needle drops.
Yeah, and then I'm pointing it out, and Max is like, okay, we need that. All it needs now is that Tick Tick Boom song by the, like, what's the band?
I can look it up.
The Hives.
The Hives. Yeah.
And then, like, 5 minutes later, Tick Tick Boom by the Hives comes on the soundtrack.
I mean, it could...
You can see the future, I think.
But it's just such a typical song for a 2000s film that it was like a 50-50 shot in a movie like this to have that dumb song.
Then it was there.
It was there. And that has a really funny death where the guy driving the boat goes, woo, and then he just gets hit by an arrow.
Yeah. Honestly, beyond that, I don't have that much.
There's
to
a
say
dog
on this
scare.
movie. There's a dog
movie,
scare.
This movie
I actually
predicted...
do kind of like this movie's Jason. He's a lot
Yeah.
faster. He's a lot more like
He's
agile.
angrier.
He's very
super
angry Jason.
Yeah, he's not zombie Jason, unfortunately, but he is.
Unfortunately, they undo that, which is disappointing.
This movie, this movie predicted Logan Paul, but Jason is fun. Derek Mears is a very good Jason.
Yeah, Derek Mears is a very underrated Jason, I think, in my opinion.
And he's got a little bit of everything. He's like slightly, he teleports a bit. He's got part 2 Jason. You see him as a kid briefly. You see him with the mask. He's kind of got like a little of every Jason. He runs like in part 2. He's as imposing as in part 6. So he's kind of like a good amalgamation of all of them.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate. There's a line that where Chewie just says, "Hey, let's all just be one happy cliche." A little tongue in cheek. Yeah, we know that we're wearing what we are on the sleeves. We're taking what Pearl Clutchers think Friday the 13th characters are and putting it up to the 10th level.
Yeah.
But I used to hate this, but it's a really dumb ending.
I don't like this. It's just
I don't hate it. I really actually do like the Texas Chainsaw remake. This movie I used to hate.
I just don't like it. It's just like so aggressively like it's frustrating to me. I'm not huge on this.
I think it does have some good cinematography.
It's so like it's so
clean.
sleazy. It's sleazy. It's too
very sleazy.
It's sleazy in a way that like the originals never were, which is like its idea of what a Friday the 13th film is very weird and distorted.
Now, here's a question. Do you think it's as sleazy as it was to audiences when the first movies came out? Because Friday the 13th, the originals are fairly tame.
No.
You think this is worse?
I think maybe it's like just the shock of time. Maybe
like imagine this coming out in '81, the remake. Like
this would have been banned. This would have been
be a video
banned.
nasty. Yeah.
Yeah, this would have been a video nasty if it had come out.
Anyways,
I don't really recommend it. Just watch the opening 20 minutes, honestly. The opening 20 minutes are better.
I'd recommend the opening 20 minutes, and if it's on, I guess I'd say stick around if you really want to, and if you don't like what you see, leave. I don't recommend it, but I don't not recommend it. I kind of recommend it on the same level as, I don't know, Freddy vs. Jason. Anyway, that's the last official Friday movie at the moment, because it's now in legal hell. The last one we'll talk about is Never Hike Alone, the Ghost Cut, which features
Never Hike Alone and Never Hike in Snow.
And Disappeared, the music video.
So what we're going to be talking about, these are not actually Friday films. These are fan films. And these are 2 shorts and a music video. But what is also important is they are actually presented as being in canon with some of the films. Tom Matthews shows up as Tommy Jarvis. We even get Deputy Sheriff Rick Cologne from 6 coming back. So these are presented as fairly direct sequels to 6.
It's canon. Everything is canon up until 9. So 1 through 8 are canon.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how it is presented in the Ghost Cut, which is the anthology presentation. And I respect that this fan film got the attention like this. It's on the kill count or whatever. It's people that watch this. For fans of the series have actually watched this, and I've never really watched
I think we need to talk about why. See, the issue with Friday the 13th now is that it is currently trapped in legal hell. Basically, there is there has been, for years, a massive series of court cases between Sean S. Cunningham, producer of the original film, and Victor Miller, writer of the original film, as to who actually owns the rights to Friday the 13th. And one of the consequences of this constant legal battle that has been in and out of courts is that any new Friday the 13th project in production is that one party greenlights is pretty much immediately shut down by the next party. So basically, for the foreseeable future, there are no Friday the 13th movies happening. So that means we are left with some other venues on searching for sort of Friday stuff. Matt, we have Never Hike Alone, and there is something else I am going to discuss. But for now, we have Never Hike Alone, which is a fan film followed by its sequel, Never Hike in the Snow, which is...
It's a prequel.
Prequel, actually, yeah.
And, honestly, I definitely respect what this movie represents more than I enjoyed watching it through and through.
Yeah.
Watching the Ghost Cut, what a weird way to start it with
because it starts with a music video.
For like, what was it? It was like a Radiohead knockoff.
It sounded like Radiohead, yeah.
Right.
Or like a Radiohead song that has like Jason Voorhees killing people.
It does not feel like a Friday the 13th song.
Yeah.
But Jason is just killing, poor actors and.
But then we get
goofy.
Then we get the actual fan film. So first we get Never Hike in the Snow, which is just like.
It's less focused than Never Hike Alone.
It's just basically like the basic plot of it. It's just Tommy Jarvis trying to convince like the sheriff
he's
who
only
is
in,
the
like, one
deputy
it's more
that Jason's back, and then Jason kills a bunch of people, and then it kind of sets up the intro of Never Hike Alone.
Well,
it's not very focused in terms of
the
plot.
body count of these movies are pretty low. The music video has a higher body count than both of these. It has the same body count as this movie, it's more about Cologne, and so a guy goes missing. It starts out with, you see him in the snow, running away. Jason comes and kills him in a really cool effect. He, uses an axe and unhinges his jaw, because the axe, goes inside his mouth. It's pretty gruesome looking. It's pretty scary. It looks like something from The Night Flyer. And then the rest is kind of like a semi-procedural, where they're trying to find him, but we already know what happened.
Yeah. And
Cologne played by the Yabang guy from Part 6.
Because he is. It's the same character.
Yeah. He even has the same gun. And it's got a few cool moments. I like the police body cam footage at the end when he's looking for that one officer's looking for Jason. And I do think having it in the snow is a very cool idea that should have been done. It's a really cool idea.
It's definitely like something I think that is limited by its resources.
I do think that the title makes very little sense, because Never Hike Alone is good advice. Never hike in the snow. Why not? Snow is fun to hike in.
Yeah. But then they follow that up with Never Hike Alone, which is a lot more focused. Basically, our story of this is it's a hiker and live streamer just goes into the woods near Crystal Lake, stumbles into the camp, and comes across Jason. And then instead of it being okay, Jason racking up a huge body count, basically it's just a cat and mouse game between Jason and this guy as he's trying to outmaneuver him.
It reminded me of a Blumhouse found footage movie to some degree, kind of something like not quite like the Ritual, but maybe kind of like the Gallows-ish, or one of those hiking in the woods and getting lost movies from Blumhouse. It's 50 minutes.
It's not bad. It's not bad. I don't think it's the greatest thing, and it's definitely very limited, but I don't think it's that bad.
I think having two dream sequences back to back,
yeah, it's a
little
little too much.
And I do think it took a little bit too long. And Jason, they show him
weird
in the
Jason.
It's a decent Jason at night, but in the day you can see that it's a fan film. They didn't have the budget to make him really look like they wanted to. So he looks fine, but it's just too much Jason in the day, Yeah. Jason sounds like he's an elephant because he's just got the heaviest footsteps. Then there's strobe lights at the end I didn't like. But Tommy Jarvis shows up again.
Yeah.
Also, I noticed that in these movies, they really like to show off their Camp Crystal Lake signs. There's so many reveals of Crystal Lake, and there's a sign. They're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And
they're very proud of
this. They kept on changing, we didn't mention, but in the previous movies, they kept changing the name to, Camp Greenwood and Camp Blood or whatever, and now, eventually, they changed it back, but...
To Camp Crystal Lake, yeah.
But
yeah, they're fine.
They're fine. They definitely work as short films. It's just like it's very different because it's not like there's no body count. It's just one guy versus Jason, and then at the very end some like randoms.
Yeah.
But it
There's
is
that.
serviceable entertainment if you are dying for a new Friday the 13th movie.
Yeah. And
Well-
now, like I said, Friday the 13th's trapped in legal hell. But before that, there are one or two Friday movies we almost got. There was one called Friday the 13th Part 13 that was meant to be in the same... That was meant to sort of be Platinum Dunes' follow-up to their Friday the 13th. It was going to be partially... It was going to be largely a backstory. It was going to be sort of revising the series, mixing together elements of the first three films into essentially a backstory for Jason that follows up to Jason's drowning at Crystal Lake, the original sort of campers, and like that were responsible for that death. Then goes through Pamela Voorhees' killing spree, and then ends on sort of Jason having a spree of his own. Also was apparently going to introduce Jason's father.
Elias
Voorhees, yes. It seems like an interesting pitch. I cannot find the script online. However, there was another script I found that was available online. And this is the one that they had greenlit beforehand. It is Friday the 13th 3D. This is written by Nick Antosca. Antosca is actually, like, kind of respected in some underground circles of horror. He's a novelist and short story writer and a screenwriter and showrunner. He did a lot of writing for Hannibal, which is a high water mark in my book. He is the showrunner on a series called Channel. He was the showrunner on a series called Channel Zero, which is a fairly good sci-fi channel original horror series. That sort of takes like creepypasta stories as its inspiration and adapts them. It's a very good horror series. It does a lot of very openly surreal David Lynch-inspired horror, which is very hard to find in modern television. And, like, it's usually all pretty good in execution. I'd probably recommend the third season the most, Butcher's Block. That season is incredible, and it has Rutger Hauer in it, so you know it's gotta be good. But Antosca submitted a screenplay for Friday the 13th, and I actually really like it. Because the basic pitch of it is, it starts out as a very classical Friday the 13th film. It's not like immediately diverging too hard from the structure. It's like Jason's at Crystal Lake, there's a massacre, but the way it executes it is actually really interesting. Because what stands out to me about the script is that the characters kind of have the awareness and thought that they have in like the boat parts of 8. Where it's like characters who are actively responding to Jason's killing spree, trying to figure out ways out of Crystal Lake. Jason is a lot more tactical and a lot more aggressive in it. It's slower Jason, but he is like actively out thinking and out maneuvering people. It's like got some truly unnerving moments in it. It's got great slower pacing where it takes it more patiently and lets you sort of ease into things. And then the final 15 minutes happen, and if they had happened, this might have been a contender for one of my favorite Friday movies. Because 15 minutes before the end of the film, Jason is impaled and dies. And then he gets back up again. That's right, Platinum Dunes is originally gonna do Supernatural Jason. And this time there's no explanation. He's not a zombie, he's just full-on cosmic horror as he just gets up. He even takes, like, a bullet that blows his brain open, and he just kills the entirety of Crystal Lake. And the film ends on a shot of Jason walking through a snowed-out ghost town of Crystal Lake, still alive, still hunting. It is actually really effective, and I am really disappointed that this did not get made. Like, it's a good Friday the 13th script.
Yeah, no, I would have, that sounds pretty cool. I think we are about ready for, breaking down our favorites to least favorites, or other way around.
Let's go least favorite to favorite. What is your least favorite? Do I even need to ask?
So, really quick, before we go on, I found what Metascore and Rotten Tomatoes ranks these. So I will also be including what they think along with our opinion.
Yeah.
For me, my least favorite is the first. No, it's Part X.
It's Jason X. It's the same for me, honestly. Like, there's no question about it. It's just like, it's not just doing one franchise badly. It's doing two separate franchises, including one I really love badly. And it's unfunny. It's poorly made. It's just like, it feels cheap. It's just bad. And it's like, it's Kane Hodder's final film as Jason, and what a terrible way for him to go out. That's like, he deserved better. He deserved a better
That's
way
like
to go out.
Sigourney
than that.
Weaver going out on Resurrection.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, it is the Alien Resurrection of the franchise. In more ways than one.
Yeah, I do not like that movie. I don't know if you dislike it more. I know we both have... I think this might be our biggest discrepancies, though, as we go on later in terms of our opinions on these, because usually our rankings are pretty close. I think this one might be our most difference. Yeah. Anyway, really quick. Metascore says the worst is Part 7, The New Blood.
Oh, come on.
And Rotten Tomatoes says Part 3 is the worst.
Oh, come on. No.
And then you agree Part X is the worst.
Yeah.
You want to go with your number 12?
My number 12 is the remake. The remake. Like, I like the first 20 minutes of the remake. The rest is just aggressively not my thing. I do not like the characters. I think it's just like aggressively dumb. Like, it's just like it's unpleasant for me. Like, spending time with the cast of that movie is actively unpleasant to me.
I agree. My number 12, I can't really talk about it because it's Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah.
But I guess just the 2000s Jason movies never really did it as well for me. Metascore gives Part 8 the second worst, number 12. Or, well, actually, number 11, because this does not include the fan film. And their number 11, I guess I'll hold off on one, but Rotten Tomatoes says number 8 is also the second worst one.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I'll just like wait one over, so we're even with these. Anyway,
my number 11 is Freddy vs. Jason as well. Like, again, I'm not saying anything about this movie. We'll get to it.
For me, it's the remake. It was close to what my number 9 would be, or 10. I do think that this does have a lot of love for the franchise in it, but it's a little too... The characters are just so unlikable. It's a little too clean looking, and kind of just like not a very fun time.
Yeah.
My number... Let's see... 13, 12, 11. My number 10 would be Never Hike Alone.
Yeah.
I think having fun, in terms of enjoyment, I almost kind of prefer the remake, but I just respect the fan film for what it represents. Just having a fan film get this much attention is very inspiring.
Yeah. Again,
they did good with what they had.
Yeah, I think I'm there
good
with
effects.
You. I think I'm there with you. My number 10 is also Never Hike Alone. I don't think it's great. But I respect a lot of what it does.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, okay, I like the execution. I like that they're trying to do something different. It doesn't work as well for me, but...
really quick.
But I like that it's getting attention too.
Rotten Tomatoes says number 9 is at number 10, which is Jason Goes to Hell.
No.
And Metascore says number 5, The New Blood, is the number 10.
No, number 5 is The New Beginning.
New Beginning, yeah, sorry.
Okay, so yeah, we'll get to the disagreement on Jason Goes to Hell later. But yeah.
Oh, I love Jason Goes to Hell.
Oh yeah, we'll get to my disagreement. My number 9 is actually Part 2. Like, Part 2 doesn't really have much to add for me. It's just too much of a revisit of the original. Like, it just covers territory we've already done, but not as good as the original did it. Like, it doesn't really have much to add.
Yeah, that's a good take. Before I say mine, Metascore gives number 9, Jason Goes to Hell, as the 9th worst.
You didn't give your 9th. Did you
I will after
Yeah.
this. And Rotten Tomatoes says Jason X as number 10.
That's far too high.
Or number 9 or 10. Wait,
9.
where are we? Yeah,
9.
For me, it's Part 3. If there was more of the biker gang, it would be higher. I love the 3D, but I kind of got, after a while I got a bit of a headache, and it did not stick out as well. The characters weren't as memorable as in Part 1 or 2. I didn't love the kind of California aesthetic that they went for. It's fine. Because we're past the movies I hate. We're now at the ones I like.
Okay.
My number... My number 8 is part 5, A New Beginning.
That's also mine. That's actually also mine. So we kind of perfectly line up there.
I think it's an I enjoy it. I like Roy Burns as kind of the.
I think it's very much a mixed
Jason.
bag. I think it's very much a mixed bag. I mean, there's stuff I like in it, but I think like
the toilet song.
It's like the weak. It's absolute. It's got a lot of weird choices, and it's absolutely the weakest of the Jarvis trilogy. Like it just doesn't stand. I think it's fine. I don't think it's great. I think it's fine. I think it just really suffers when you compare it to 4 and 6, which is it comes in between, and it is like it does not look that great when you compare it to those two.
Well, Rotten Tomatoes also agrees number 5 is the 8th best.
Yeah.
Whereas Metascore says the first is actually the 8th best.
Really?
Huh. Now we go on to, you want to bring your number 7?
My number 7 is part 3. It's just like, it's just funny to me. Like, I like the silly 3D. I like all the weirdness of it. It's just, it's a very, it's like a so bad, it's kind of a so bad it's good one, but I do kind of genuinely enjoy it. It's a guilty pleasure. It's absolutely a guilty pleasure for me.
For me, it's Jason Goes to Hell. Underrated. Super fun. Love the change in pace and world.
You're gonna be surprised, man.
I mean, no, honestly,
You're gonna be surprised by my list, then.
This is definitely, like, honestly, everything from part 3 upwards, or even this and upwards, I actually love. Like, I would put these on any time. Jason Goes to Hell is super fun, and it's kind of tied for my number 6, but I do really like Jason Goes to Hell and how weird it is, and it did, I will argue, it added a burst of energy that the series needed that Part X did not give. As for Rotten Tomatoes, they say number 4 is the 7th best, which is a surprisingly low.
Jesus.
And Metascore says 10 is the 7th best,
No,
which is too high.
That's far too high. Anyways, 6th best. That's number 6 for me. That's Jason Takes Manhattan. I love all the stuff in the boat. All the Manhattan stuff is painfully dumb.
For me, it's part 2. It's part 1. Not as charming, but it's still fun. And good old Ted survived. I don't have a whole lot to say about this one, but I did like it about as much as Jason Goes to Hell. Metascore says number 6 is part 2 also, and Rotten Tomatoes says number 6 is actually the remake.
Huh.
For number 5, here's where we get controversial, where these keep changing, Quinn.
Yeah.
So don't get too mad at me. These always change. Number 6 at number 5 for me.
Wow.
I love number 6. I think
what a shocker.
I think one of the reasons why it's not as high as right now is just there were a few jokes that were a little too self-aware for me. Just a little bit, like the smiley face in the tree didn't completely work. It was a little too
it's
goofy.
a little weird. It's a weird joke.
But honestly, I love this movie. I love that it's an important movie in the franchise. It added Zombie Jason, which is the essential Jason, and I highly recommend this one, and I love it.
Yeah. I'm about to drop another big hot one.
Yeah.
Number 5 is the original Friday the 13th. I think it kind of gets outshone by some of the sequels for me in terms of execution, but it's like a very fine slasher, and I cannot understate its place in film history. Like, this is an essential movie for very big reasons. And I think it's fairly solid. I don't think it's my favorite slasher. It's like probably not even top 5, but it's good.
I agree. Rotten Tomatoes says part 2 is at number 5, and Metascore says part 3 is at number 5. Now we're moving on. Quinn, you want to bring me your number 4?
My number 4 is part 7, The New Blood. Like, it's very silly. It's definitely like kind of accidentally X-Men at points, but it's got some very good moments. Like it's still kind of cut down, but it has some but the moments when it shines are really striking, and it's like probably the most actually suspenseful of the movies. It's like the one that relies less than like straight up shock, which I always appreciate.
For me, it is number 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. You were mentioning that part 3 was kind of a guilty pleasure in terms of kind of bordering on so bad it's good. And I think everything in Manhattan borders on so bad it's good, and everything on the boat is campy and stupid, but also kind of legitimately interesting and fun. So I actually really like Jason Takes Manhattan. That's one of my hot takes. Jason Takes Manhattan at number 4. Rotten Tomatoes gives number 7, The New Blood, also at number 4, and at number 4, Metascore gives 6 at the 4th place.
All right, my number 3. All right, this is the hot take.
Mm-hmm.
Jason Goes to Hell. Jason Goes to Hell is actually my number 3. Like, I really like this one. I like the weird risks it takes. I really like the swing for the fences attitude of it. I like that it kind of changed things up in a way that tries to tell a very different story with the Friday franchise. And I think it's actually pretty good execution. Like, I don't care if it pisses the fan base off. It tried something new, and it's fun, and I enjoy it. And it's got some great effects, too.
For me, number 3 is part 4, The Final Chapter. Love The Final Chapter. It's the most pure Friday film. Crispin Glover dancing is the best scene of the franchise. Rotten Tomatoes says Freddy vs. Jason at number 3.
Really?
And Metascore gives also part 4 the 3rd place trophy. For me, number 2 is the original Friday the 13th.
Okay.
Love this movie, very important. Love the characters. I can put this on whenever if I'm feeling blue and just listen to Kevin Bacon dressed as Shaggy talk about whatever and try to decipher what strip Monopoly is.
Yeah. My number 2 is Final Chapter. It's like probably the best made of the conventional Friday films. It's the one that I'd say resembles is the best as a pure horror film. It is the one that makes you care the most about the characters. It is the one that puts the most into atmosphere and pacing. It is the one that has the most thought put into everything and how it does it, and is carefully crafted, meticulously so. This is the one that is maybe the best of the films, if not my favorite.
It's a great. So for Metascore, they actually say the remake is the second best, and the Rotten Tomatoes says part 6 is the second best.
Okay.
Now I'm going to quickly, because our opinions are worth more than Metascore and Rotten Tomatoes, I'm going to go through these quickly. Metascore says Freddy vs. Jason is the best of the series. Which is incorrect.
No.
And then Rotten Tomatoes says the first is the best of the series.
Okay, so Rotten Tomatoes is a purist. Rotten Tomatoes is a purist. Metacritic is just
put 6
fucking
at number
wrong.
2, which is a pretty good choice.
Okay. So what is your number 1?
Part 7.
Okay. I can accept that.
That's my scalding take. I love Part 7. It's got the purity of Part 4, but they have the best Jason. It
does have the best Jason.
The kills, even though they're cut down, are great, and when you see what they actually had, are even better. I like the characters. I love the ridiculous ending. I love the psychic battle with Jason. It's so fun. It's got the best secondary villain along with Jason, which is Dr. Cruz. I love the New Blood, and apparently Rotten Tomatoes or Metascore disagrees because they said that's the worst one.
Yeah. Anyways, does my favorite one even need to be stated at this point? It's 6. It's Jason Lives. It's the best one. It's the one where Tom McLaughlin came in, took a look at the franchise, and said, no, how about we do a crazy universal horror-influenced metafictional horror comedy that's also still scary instead.
It's a big brain movie.
It is the one, again, you hear me talk about this a lot. I am always a supporter of the films that take the weird choices and swing for the franchises, and this is yet another installment, like Saw, in which the 6th film is my favorite. Because it is the one where they take the weird swings and they try something new, they reinvigorate the franchise, and it works. It hits. I love this one. And it's got a song that I still keep on my listening playlist to this day. It's funny as hell. It's actually creepy. It's got the best shot in any of these movies. I love this film. This is my favorite Friday film, and this is the one I would eat. And this and 4 and 6 would be the ones I'd recommend to anybody, because you can watch both of those films back to back. 4 and 6 back to back, and you get like you don't even need 5. You just get a good like complete story.
Yeah, just watch like a Spark Notes of 5. I like 5 enough, and I agree with everything you said, and I think it's probably the second most important of the franchise, because while the first one started it all, this one brought what Jason is, how we think of him today.
This is responsible for our current idea of
Tommy
Jason.
Jarvis as how we remember him, who's in the video game. This it helped influence Scream. It's a very important movie that for the horror franchise of the 90s and 2000s, and I agree. I think anywhere in the top 5 is where it belongs at all times. I definitely think this is one of the best slasher movies, period.
Yes.
I really do like it.
Yeah, and this is a fun franchise.
And so, really quick, your favorites are 6?
My favorites are 6, 4, and 9.
Which is, 9 was I love that.
I like the divisive ones.
And we both put 4 in our top 3s.
Yeah, 4 makes it into the top 3s no matter what.
4 is, like...
So I think our collective agreement is you gotta watch 4. Like, 4 is, like, I think we can collectively agree that's the must-watch of the franchise.
I would also say 6 is a must-watch.
Yeah, 4 and 6, like, those are my must-watches of Friday. You can watch the rest of the ones I actively liked. If you want them, you can... Do not watch... you don't have to watch the remake. You should not watch Jason X. You can watch the other ones if you don't mind it being cheesy and, like, kind of, like, dumb, but... A lot of this franchise is kind of guilty pleasure. Like, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of this franchise really slips into guilty pleasure territory for me, but, like, 4 and 6 I can genuinely recommend as being really good movies on their own.
This is the franchise that I think is consistently entertaining throughout the later movies.
It's not always good, but it is entertaining.
But like 6, 7, 8, 9, I all love those movies, and those are way deep into the franchise. So it's like Halloween isn't that.
We'll discuss
consistent.
Halloween.
Nightmare on Elm Street isn't that. I don't know any other horror franchise that is that consistent, that long lasting. Hellraiser isn't.
And that's something to be admired.
So anyway,
that is the episode.
Happy Friday the 13th.
Happy Friday the 13th,
Watch
everybody.
part 4 or 6.
Yeah.
Or
we'll
1.
be back. We'll be back soon. I believe we said next episode we're going to do is Blair Witch. We've already got the prep work out of the way for that one. We can just.
Oh, we have to rewatch the Adam Wingard movie, maybe.
Oh God.
That's our big argument.
That's going to be a big argument.
It's not
we'll do that. We still got to finish up the Ring. But yeah, we'll be back, hopefully soon. But anyways, thank you so much for listening, and happy Friday the 13th.
Bye.